The Louie T Network is powered by Music Head University. Music Heads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So tonight's show, a bevy of topics to get to. The first thing that I want to knock out, because I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, is the delay of the voting process for Washington's organization changing hands. We kind of saw this coming. I think it was Nikki Javala that had a story last week that raised some questions. Well, she reported on questions that were being raised about the Harris Group and their financials. Essentially, the NFL has this archaic bidding process, and what an prospective owner must be able to put up in terms of cash, being liquid, essentially 30% of whatever the asking price is for the franchise you're about to, buy. Now, in past years, we've seen the number go up from, 2.4, I think is what the Panthers sold for, something in that neighborhood, when David Tepper took over back in like 2013 or whatever it was, 2017, or whatever it was, 2019, somewhere in there, 18. The Broncos, most recently sold, I think that number was like 4.5. I believe the Walton Group bought it for. And so, look, if you're extremely wealthy, 30% of $2 billion is nothing, which most of these NFL owners are wealthy beyond our wildest imagination. Like, you could never begin to even fathom how much money these guys have. Stan Kroenke essentially built SoFi Stadium, which is the most state-of-the-art stadium in the NFL. It's the newest stadium that's been built in LA, pretty much out of his own pocket. Daniel Snyder could never dream of doing something like that, which is the reason why I really feel like he's selling the team. It's not because he's feeling societal pressure or he's had enough or all of these lawsuits and different investigations have finally gotten to him. I think it's the financial burden of not being able to build a stadium, having one that's decrepit and old and falling apart, having to take out a loan to, buy the rest of the team, essentially, and not having that money to pay back the league that he borrowed from them, and not being able to finance the stadium on his own. It was too much for him to bear. And he said, you know what? Enough of this shit. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to run. And that's essentially what he's doing. And I think looking at the way that it's set up, 30% of $6 billion, it's a lot of money. You're talking about just a shade under $2 billion. You're asking someone to have in cash, right? The way that these NFL teams are moving and how much it's costing, like, it's only going to go up. They have to reduce the amount that a potential owner has to have in order to secure the purchase of a team. It makes the financial situation a lot easier. And so there are questions. I don't think it's anything major. And look, I've read articles that have suggested that if this were anybody but Dan Snyder and they didn't want him gone so bad, that they probably would not allow this sale to go through with the way that it's set up from a financial standpoint. But because they so desperately want Daniel Snyder out of there and they're ready to rid themselves of this headache, and they understand that even though the process may be a bit archaic and some of the things that they require of new potential owners having is probably a little bit outdated and antiquated, I think they also would like their owners to be a little bit more wealthy than what, Josh Harris and the rest of that group, coming in are. But at the end of the day, what can you do? You know, they're making money hand over fist. The Washington Commanders aren't going to stop that, but they would love it if the Washington franchise got back to a level of respectability that should be had in the nation's capital. They should be one of the highest grossing teams in the league, right behind Dallas, maybe the Steelers, you know, one of these, you know, franchises that just does well. You know, the Giants are one of the most profitable NFL organizations. The Patriots, obviously, since the reign of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, have shot up the charts. But Dallas is always number one, and they'll probably always be number one. And Washington should be number two. We should be right behind them. We used to be. It used to be a race between Dallas and Washington every year. That's to show you how far we've fallen from grace, and it's all because of Daniel Snyder. Even if we had won during his time as owner, I still don't think fans would come back, and I still don't think that they would have been where they should be from a financial standpoint. Winning would have helped soften some of the blows that we've taken, but it would not have absolved the problem altogether. Right? It would not have resolved the problem. So the league's going to vote on this eventually, but they're not going to do it in May as we had hoped. So it's kind of delaying the process, but it's inevitable. They're delaying the inevitable. This thing is done. Okay. So you don't need to worry about that. It's going to get done. It's just, there are a little bit of, you know, legalities that have to be sorted out, dotting I's, crossing T's, that sort of thing. But I definitely wanted to mention that. The next thing that I wanted to mention tonight's show was just the optimism, man. I can't help but bring this up. And look, generally speaking, I don't want to make it seem like I'm not optimistic as we get towards this time of the year and we start to near another NFL season, because I am. I'm usually optimistic as we draw nearer to the start of an NFL season, as we get closer to training camp, which, you know, we're getting towards that last period where there's absolutely no ball, when we're in the dark, which is June. Once we hit the third week of June, everything goes radio silent until the middle of July. Like literally, that's when, if you're going to go golfing, go golfing. If you're going to go on a family vacation, go on a family vacation. Because this is the last time you're going to have free time to yourself as a player, coach, anybody, administrator, anybody in the building. They literally shut the building down for a few weeks after these mini camps, and you know, you get through phase 3 of all of these different mini camps. After you knock all of this out, and I think June like 10th through 12th, 14th through 16th, somewhere in there is usually when that last set of mini camps take place. That's it. We will hear nothing. Then that's when you got to start conjuring up stuff to talk about, because there is absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing to discuss. And that's when the excitement begins to build and build. And then once you hit July, it starts to bubble. It starts to permeate. And then it explodes once training camp hits. This year, and you can kill me, crucify me for this, because I may have said something along these lines before. I mean, I've been doing this for over a decade now. And so I'm pretty sure I've said something to the effect of this before. This feels different. Nothing quite feels like this. And I've said this already this offseason. And I know I've never said that before. This is the biggest offseason in Washington football history, right? This organization's history. We've won Super Bowls. We've welcomed back the greatest coach in our franchise's history back into the organization again. We've done so many different things. We've seen Mike Shanahan, a 2-time Super Bowl winning head coach, come here and to coach this football team. We've seen a lot of things transpire here in Washington. And this offseason trumps all of it, because you're getting, as a fan, you're getting your franchise back. And that level of excitement has been unmatched. I can't tell you how many fans I've spoken to that I haven't spoken to in years, because they were done. They had made up their minds that they weren't going to support this team as long as Daniel Snyder was the owner. And my stance was always, you'll be back. You can't stay away. If you truly love this team the way that you say you love them, you'll be back. Whether they have to win big for you to come back, or you just look, you're never fully out of it. Even if you're not doing the day-to-day things that you once did, you're not paying attention as closely as you once did. You're maybe not devoting as much time. You're checking box scores if you're not watching a game. You're keeping tabs on what the team's doing, who they drafted in the first round. You may not know who their 5th or 6th round draft pick is, but you know who their first round draft pick is. You're keeping close enough tabs that if you want to dip your toe back in the water, you can. And all of those fans are coming back slowly but surely. They're not all back yet, right? But slowly but surely, they're starting to make their way back over. And the fans that have already been here, who never left to begin with, who were just dealing with the bullshit that we got, we were already excited because of Eric Bieniemy. Not everybody's excited about Sam Howell. I am. You know how I feel. And I try not to live in this in this bubble, this insulated bubble that we've created here, because it's very easy to get lost in this little bubble, in this community that we've created, and brainwash ourselves into thinking. This is why, I always encourage counterculture, right? I always encourage you guys to be independent thinkers. Don't just go along to get along. If you don't agree, say it, because it's easy to get lost in our community, of 5 to 10,000 Washington fans who all kind of see things through a very similar lens, and you get excited and it's not reality. We start telling ourselves that, this position group is the best in the NFL, or this position group is this. And you start listening to some of these talking heads who have no idea what's going on out here. And they'll tell you Washington's defensive line is this and it's that. And you start running with that stuff. And all of a sudden, you start believing it. When you've been watching the entire time, you've been following this team day to day. You know what's true and what's not true, or at least what it is to you. So don't let anybody else tell you how you're supposed to feel about anything. That includes Ron Rivera. You've watched him coach. You don't have to love Rivera. I don't love Ron Rivera, okay? I knew we were getting a coach with faults when he came from Carolina. But what I also knew we were getting was a very respected man around league circles, something that we lacked in this organization since Mike Shanahan left. Nobody respected Jay Gruden as a, coach. They might have respected his offensive mind, okay? They might have respected his offensive acumen, but they didn't respect him as a coach. We lacked respect around the league from top to bottom. Ron Rivera came here and instilled a level of respect, a level of decorum that we lacked before he got here. Now, look, we knew we were getting a coach that lacked some of the intangibles that we were looking for in a head coach. And we've seen some of those things play out on the field, during games, after games, at press conferences. We've seen those things show themselves as to why he was fired the first time. But make no mistake about it, he's done what he needed to do here. Even if this season is not a success, he got us through arguably the darkest time in this franchise's history. I've been through a lot of bad years of football with this organization, but we were always called the Redskins. I've been through some dark times with this organization, right? But we've always been able to lean on the fact that we're a loyal fan base, that we're going to stick it out through thick and thin. I've been through some dark times with this organization, but there was always a way to tell yourself, hey, if we just do this, we can get back to where we once were. I've been through some dark times, but there was never, ever any workplace allegations of sexual misconduct, inappropriate treatment of people. There was never any conversation about this being one of the worst run organizations, not just in football, but in sports. Ron Rivera has gone through all of that in a span of 3 years. And cancer on a personal level, on top of that, and his mother passing away on top of that. So you don't have to like Ron Rivera. You don't have to think he's a great coach. He's done a hell of a job here. And so you couple getting Dan Snyder the hell out of here with hiring Eric Bieniemy, putting a formidable football team, which I think they're about to do this season. This is the best team Ron Rivera has assembled since he's gotten here. I was talking to a buddy of mine a couple of weeks back, and I said, I liken what Ron Rivera has done this year to a college coach coming in to a team that is just awful. And the recruiting has been bad, and there's not a lot of good players. And it usually takes you about 2 to 3 years to flush out all of the recruits from the last regime and getting your guys in there, getting them on the field. It's a lot faster now in college football, right? We saw Lincoln Riley go from Oklahoma to USC, and in 1 year take them from, let's call it what it was, a mid-program. USC, the University of Southern California, was a mid-program. They were the preeminent program in the early 2000s, and they had fallen on hard times, and they couldn't find a good quality head coach. And in comes Lincoln Riley, who thought this was going to be a 2-3 year process to get his recruits in there and turn things around. And with this transfer portal, it sped up the process. He brought Caleb Williams with him, and in 1 year, they went from a 5-win, 6-win program to damn near being in the college football playoffs. He didn't expect it to be that quick. That's not how it usually works in college football. What usually happens is you come into a program that's broken, and if you're going to fix it, you got to recruit 1 year at a time. And you got to get your guys in there, and it usually takes about 3 years before you finally start to see, okay, I got my talent in here now. I flushed all the guys. What did Deion Sanders do when he took over the program at Colorado? He told guys, hey, there's the portal. You should probably get out now because I'm about to change some shit up, and I'm about to bring in a bunch of dudes who know what I'm looking for. And if you're not about that life, you were a 1-2 win team last year. A lot of y'all ain't shit. You probably should hit the portal now. I'm just warning you. And like 20-something dudes got their shit and left. You can change a college program like that with the transfer portal now. That's not how it works in the NFL. You don't get to just come in, wave a magic wand, go out and get guys who have done it at a high level at other programs and bring them into your program. Here, there's a salary cap, and there's also this thing of, do I want to play for that franchise? Do I see a future with that football team? A lot of players don't want to come and play for Washington. So you got to build, it's almost like a small market team in the NBA. If I'm a free agent, I'm not signing with the San Antonio Spurs. I'm not signing with the OKC Thunder. I'm not signing with the Memphis Grizzlies. So you know what you have to do if you're one of those franchises? You got to draft your ass off. You got to make shrewd moves to acquire picks, and you cannot miss. Look at the Grizzlies roster. That's homegrown talent. That's not guys that signed with Memphis to play with the Grizzlies. You look at OKC's roster, that's a young, up-and-coming roster. That's not players who decided, I'm going to OKC to go play with such and such. Those are all puppies that they drafted. It's the same thing here in Washington. You know, we've gotten, these little free agents here and there, right? Little guys that are glue guys. We haven't gotten any big-time, big-name free. Nobody's coming to Washington. Let that shit sink in. Nobody wants to come here. So Ron had to do this shit the slow way. As a wise man once told me, slow progress is better than no progress. So Ron had to build this shit brick by brick. It wasn't always pretty. And sometimes he had to knock that shit down, put a new slab of cement up there and put the brick back up there the right way. Wasn't always pretty. He put the wrong brick up there and he slid it up there in the wrong direction when he went out and got the cornerback from Cincinnati, William Jackson III. There's been misses. This shit is an inexact science, right? Same shit happened when he went out and got Carson Wentz. Same shit happened when he went out and got Ryan Fitzpatrick. You knock that shit down and you start over again. But they've done a good job of holding on to the talent that was here before they got here. Terry McLaurin, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne. They've done a good job of adding some guys to supplement that over time. And what they've been effectively able to build this year, and I can't tell you how it's going to go, but what they've effectively done is they've put a team on the field, they're going to at least, that we can at least say from a talent perspective, we're not that far off. We're still not at the top of the league. We're still not top 10 talent in the league, but we're closer to top 10 than we are to 32nd in the league. It's been a long time since we've been able to say that. But if they fortified the offensive line, and we pray that they've done that, and Sam Howell is what I think he can be with the talent that we've already assembled, and I really truly think the tight end position is going to shock some of you. A lot of you wanted to draft tight end this year, and I wasn't opposed to it. But my biggest gripe with the tight end position in past years, before last year in particular, was we didn't have any athletic freaks. We didn't have anybody that you got excited about stretching the football field vertically who could just flat out run. We got two guys on the team that I feel like are athletically gifted for the tight end position, and one guy is a freak who's running a 4.5. Keep in mind, in the league, the best tight ends are running probably 4.6, 4.5. There aren't many 4.4 dudes at the tight end position, and some of the better ones are running 4.7, but they know how to separate. You find you a 4.5 Jim, that's George Kittle. George Kittle is a 4.5, 240 guy. We got a 4.5, 640 guy in Amani Rodgers on our roster, who we saw last year and we said, hey, we think we may have something. Cole Turner is a former wide receiver that we know has the ability to make plays. I'm telling you, I think we're going to be shocked by how much production we could potentially get out of the tight end position after doing nothing at all with that position a season ago. I've already said that Brian Robinson Jr., we just literally hit the tip of the iceberg with him last year. He's just getting started. You did not, I did not, we did not see the best version of Brian Robinson Jr. I'm telling you right now, this kid, and I know a lot of y'all wanted to potentially do something at running back, Bijan Robinson for a lot. He wasn't there. I'm glad he wasn't there because a lot of y'all would have lost y'all minds if he was on the board and we didn't take him, because a lot of you were saying that throughout the process. We should take Bijan Robinson. He happens to be there. Atlanta did us a solid again for the second year in a row. He wasn't going to be drafted here in Washington, unlike the year before with Drake London, who we would have taken. We weren't going to take Bijan Robinson, but I'm just glad that the fans didn't have to worry about, we should have taken Bijan Robinson. We don't need Bijan Robinson. Brian Robinson Jr. is better than you think, and I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with Antonio Gibson. And oh, by the way, it's a contract year for him, so if he's looking to get paid, he's got to ball out, just like Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Defensively, I'm still not sure what we're going to get, but I can tell you this much. I haven't seen a unit this talented defensively on paper in Washington probably since Greg Bloch was the defensive coordinator. I mean, we're talking about right after, you got to be talking the first year after Gibbs 2.0. I think Bloch took over for 1 year after Greg Williams didn't get the job and left. What are we talking about? 06? Like, you kidding me? We're talking about damn near 2 decades since we've had a defense this talented going into a season. Secondary's revamped. I mean, we got corners for days now. We didn't have enough corners at the end of the year to even field a team, it felt like. Now we're talking about, hey, who's not making the team? We got too many of you. We don't know if everybody's good. We don't know how good they're going to be. But that's a great problem to have, thinking that you have too many, a surplus. You can never have too many corners, by the way. Just like you can never have too many offensive linemen or defensive linemen. You can never have too many of those positions in particular. So we're in a great position. Those of you who want to see Kendall Fuller cut, you out of your damn mind. Good corners don't grow on trees. Newsflash, Kendall Fuller is a good corner, just in case you thought he wasn't. Safety position is booming right now in Washington. We got safeties coming out of our ears and every nook and cranny of our roster. The only position on defense that we're still kind of looking around and saying, is this shit good enough? You sure? Is linebacker. I love our defensive line rotation, especially with the addition of KJ Henry. That completes it for me. You know how I felt about Casey Toohill and James Smith-Williams being our primary backups, even though I thought F.A. did a hell of a job last year. I actually like F.A. a lot. But KJ Henry sets it off for me. I love our interior. I put our interior defensive line up against anybody else's. Who wants some? Because I take my Bama wall starting, and I'm going to tell you right now, I've said this already. You've heard me say this before. Who's better as a tandem in the league? Who's better? And there are probably 2 or 3 teams that are like raising their hands saying, hey, I got some comparable shit that I think might be better than yours. I'm listening. But when we start digging into that bench, what you got back there? What's your third D tackle look like? What's your fourth D tackle look like? I think Fadarian Mathis is going to come in and play some quality ball. And we saw what John Ridgeway was doing last year. Like, in terms of stopping a run, he might have been the best run defender we had. So I love the depth that they've been able to assemble. Like, whether Ron gets it done or not this year and he ultimately gets fired. And, you know, one of the things that was brought up to me by multiple people, I saw it on socials. I had somebody hit me in my DM and was like, yo, did you see Josh Harris just fired Doc Rivers? It's a little bit different in the NBA because the NBA is run by the players. Coaches don't mean shit. They come a dime a dozen, even though I vehemently disagree with that. That's the way that it works in the NBA. That's the law of the land, right? The players run the team. And if you got star players and they say, I don't want to play for this coach, you're going to get rid of the player or the coach because you can't find Joel Embiid's and James Harden's walking around the street. You can't find those dudes. I can find me another guy that the players like to come coach the team. It's rare that a X's and O's guy gets it done in the NBA. It's more about managing personalities. How well do your players who are anywhere from 20, 19 to 36 years old, how well do they like you? That's what the NBA is more so about than anything else. And if you win, great. If you don't, on to the next one. It's not quite like that in the NFL. Because clearly in the NBA, it's not a results-based league. You're not firing a guy 2 years after he's won a Super Bowl and 1 year removed from being NBA Coach of the Year. That's not happening in the NFL. Those guys don't find themselves looking for work. Now, you won a Super Bowl, you get about a 3-year grace period after you won the Super Bowl where we're looking around and saying, hey, man, what the hell's going on? And it's not like the Bucks with Mike Budenholzer didn't make the playoffs. They had the best record in the NBA this year. Now they got eliminated in the first round. That's not unlike being eliminated in the divisional round in the NFL, right? You had the best record in the AFC or the NFC. You get a first round bye. You come off the bye and you get smoked in your first game and you're out of the playoffs. You're still not firing your coach after that. You could be as disappointed as you want. But your coach just led you to the best record in the NFL. If you fire him after that, that's a knee-jerk reaction, and you're going to find yourself looking around for good work, good help, rather. That's no way to live in the NFL. You can do that in the NBA. Can't do that in the NFL. However, in saying that, Ron Rivera is definitely on borrowed time. Definitely on borrowed time. But that has nothing to do with what he just did. Josh Harris just did to Doc Rivers. It has everything to do with new ownership is going to come in here and they're going to want a clean house. And Ron's got to give them a reason not to. So Ron's got to put his best foot forward. And this is the best roster he's had to have a chance to do that. And I'm legitimately optimistic about this upcoming season. Legitimately. For the first time in a long time. And this isn't just because Daniel Snyder. A lot of it has to do with that, though. Don't get me wrong. But it's not just because of that. Even if Dan were still here, I would be less optimistic. You know, I wouldn't be as optimistic as I am. But I still would love this roster that we're going to put on the field this year. I still would love Sam Howell and love the confidence that I think he's going to play with this year. I still would love the changes that have been made to the staff. I still would love the hiring of Eric Bieniemy. I still would love all of the things that they've done this offseason, with one or two things being questionable. But of the 15 things they've done this offseason, if I'm only questioning one or two of them, I'd say you had a pretty damn good offseason. I think we're in a position to play some damn good football this year. Now, obviously, a lot hinges upon what you get out of the quarterback. I think it starts up front with the offensive line. Before we even talk about Sam Howell, if that offensive line isn't fixed, everything that I just said, forget about it. We're going to stink again. As we saw last year, if your offensive line ain't worth a damn, neither is your offense. Because as they go, you go. You can have the best quarterback in the league. If he's behind a shitty offensive line, that quarterback isn't going to be the best in the league for very long. Because I ain't met a quarterback that could do that yet. We watched Patrick Mahomes get his ass handed to him in the Super Bowl behind a shitty offensive line. And they were all kinds of banged up. It's not like they assembled that line and that's what they had been all year. They were all kinds of broken by the time they got to the Super Bowl. And they put a patchwork makeshift line in front of him and the Bucs destroyed it. I ain't met a quarterback that could do that yet. If we want Sam Howell to have a chance to be successful, those 5 guys in front of him better be ready to do their job at a very high level. Whatever 5 they put on the field. They get that right, I think everything else will fall into place. Because I think Sam's going to come in and he's going to play some ball. Yep. I've already said this. He's going to make some mistakes. I'm not telling you Sam Howell's going to come in here and be perfect. But what I am telling you is he's going to be good enough to get us where we want to go and put us in a position to strike if opportunity should present itself. Because that's what's happened. Think about last season in particular. Think about some of the losses. Think about some of the games and how they transpired. Think about a throw here. Because look, let's be real with ourselves. Sam Howell, there's I don't know. I'm going to look it up right now. How many interceptions did Taylor Heineke throw last year? Had to be at least 12. Had to be at least 12. I'm going to look it up real quick because I have no idea. But you got to figure that even if he comes in here, Sam Howell does, and he turns it over, 10, 11 times from an interception, fumble, and Heineke had fumbles too, right? I'd assume that even if he turns it over there, so he only had 6 interceptions. Interesting. I thought he would have had a lot more than that. He had 15 the year before. All right. The full year that he was the starter, he had 15. He brought that number down to 6 last year, but I guarantee there's at least 5 or 6 fumbles in there too that, obviously we can't see here. Let me see if I can look up how many times he fumbled last year. Taylor Heineke fumbles. Taylor Heineke fumbled 7 times last year, lost 5 of them. All right, so 11 total turnovers are charged to the account of Taylor Heineke. All right, 11 from last season. And there could have been at least 4 or 5 more. I'm thinking about the Houston Texans game, first possession, he throws the ball right to their rookie safety and he drops it. The Packers first half, that first game Heineke came in for Carson Wentz, that Packers game might have been the worst half of football I've seen from a quarterback in Washington since Mark Sanchez versus the Giants back in 2017, where we were down like 30-0 at half to the Giants, and he threw like 2 pick sixes, it felt like, but it probably just one, and he threw like 2 or 3 interceptions, and he was awful. Haven't seen a quarterback performance that lousy since that Sanchez, that dirty Chaz performance. He was awful in the first half against the Green Bay Packers. Probably should have been picked off 3 or 4 times in that first half if the Packers could catch. And we know what he did in the second half. He rallied and bounced back and played phenomenal ball and led us to a victory. But I brought all of that up to say Sam Howell probably going to turn it over just as many times as Heineke did last year. You would expect him to as a rookie, essentially, is what he'll be, a first-year starter. But I guarantee you this, he's going to make a lot more throws than Taylor Heineke made. Heineke only had 12 touchdown tosses last year. And there could have been a lot more. There was a lot of meat left on that bone last year. I think about the first Giants game. Like, to me, that's where the season was lost. Because we were up 10-0. We should have been up 14. Just think about it. If we are up 14-0 with the momentum that we had, the Giants are dead. Daniel Jones fumbled on the opening possession of the game, and we only got a field goal out of that. I think we got a field goal out of that one. And that was the possession, if I'm not mistaken, Logan Thomas is wide ass open for a walk-in touchdown, and Heineke overthrows him by like 10 yards. You're like, what the hell, bro? Settle for a field goal. And remember, the only reason we scored a touchdown to make it 10-0 is because Terry reached behind him on a poorly thrown football and snagged it with one hand and then broke a tackle on a 3rd and like 7 and walked into the end zone. Terry made a spectacular catch and then broke a tackle and scored. Heineke battled, we weren't good up front, all of that good stuff. At the end of the day, I expect the quarterback position to be upgraded just by Sam Howell showing up with athleticism, arm talent, the ability to make throws anywhere on the football field accurately. What was the thing that we were most excited about? Yeah, the deep balls were cool, and I'm excited about that because in this league, when you get an opportunity to hit a deep ball, you can't afford to miss. But you know what I was most excited about? Was just ball placement. How many Jahan Dotson catch and runs did we have in that Dallas game in week 18? How many times have we seen that throughout the year? Not many. One of the few times we saw it was the Giants game, and look what Jahan did. Look how electrifying he was on that final possession of regulation for Washington, where he catches that ball on a shallow cross, gets up the field, spins on the defender, and gets into the end zone. Just get the playmakers the football in space with the ability to make something happen by giving them an accurate ball. We couldn't even do that with Wentz and with Heineke last year. So just adding a guy like Sam Howell who's going to be accurate, if nothing else, it's going to give us a chance. I like where we sit. My optimism is extremely high. Now, I'm also a realist. I'm not. I always tell you guys that optimism is great, but it's only useful if there's also realistic expectations and realism poured into that optimism as well. Because too much optimism will take you to a place of no return. So I also understand that we have limitations. That some of the teams on our schedule are just flat out better than us. And if they play their best ball and we play our best ball, it just won't be good enough. I have questions about this defense. I have questions about the offensive line. You probably have questions about the quarterback position. All of these are valid. But for the first time in what seems like a long time, I don't question the overall quality of this roster. And you can say what you want about Martin Mayhew and Ron Rivera. And look, I've said this before as well. When they got here, it couldn't have been any worse than it already was. So, like, they couldn't make the roster worse than what it was in 2019. But they also could have kept us in a position where we were stagnant. And the next coach comes in here and says, what the hell had this dude been doing for the last 4 years? This roster is shit. He could have also done that. Because that's essentially what Jay Gruden did. And it wasn't his fault. He wasn't picking the players. That was more Bruce Allen than anything else, and Dan Snyder. But the last guy, when Ron got here, he's probably like, what the hell have they been doing for the last 5 years? This roster is terrible. How did it get to this point? They can't say that. If Ron's not here next year, they can't say that. So I'm optimistic about the season. And I feel really good about where we sit. So with that being said, all of that, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the team, the roster, how excited I was, with the news last week of the sale pretty much being pushed through. And it got me to thinking about a number of things. And I've already mentioned this to you guys before about this roster in particular, and just how talented I think we are this year. But, maybe you don't think it's blue chip talent. That's fine. It may not be blue chip talent. Okay. But the depth throughout, assuming blue chip is the best, red chip is the next best, and let's call third best a white chip. And let's call the worst a yellow chip. We don't have many yellow chips on this roster, if any. I think the lowest you might go is a white chip, and I think this roster is chock full of red chip players. We'd like more blue chip players, and I think we're getting to a point where we feel like, hey, this guy's a blue chip, that guy's a blue chip, that guy's a blue chip, this guy could be a blue chip. Like, I think Jahan Dotson has a chance to be a blue chip. I'm actually counting him as a blue chip right now, but it's too premature to do that. But I'm doing it anyway because I've already seen enough to know what he's going to be in this league. And to be able to put him next to a blue chip already who's established in Terry McLaurin makes me feel damn good about the state of the receiver position here in Washington. Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are blue chips. I just gave you 3 blue chips on our team. When's the last time we've been able to say we got 3 blue chips? You want to count Tress Way? Knock yourself out. I'm not counting Tress Way. But if you want to count him, knock yourself out. He'd be a 4th. It's been a while. We need more. 3's not enough. 4, if you count Tress Way, that's not enough. But damn it, that's a long way from where we were just a short 3 years ago, where the only blue chip player on this team was a guy that didn't want anything to do with us in Trent Williams, who hadn't played for us in over a year and a half. So we've come a long way, and we're still building. So feels good to be able to say that. And it got me to thinking about this roster. There's just not a lot of space, man. It's not a lot of space. And they're still adding guys and they're subtracting guys. And You know, they're bringing in undrafted rookies, and some of these guys are competing for legitimate spots on this team, which means if somebody's coming in, somebody's got to go. Because unlike past years, and this is one of the messages that I've been repeating to you guys over and over again, unlike past years, with the back end of the roster, you can say, hey, bro, look, man, we got plenty of space. All right. We should be out here looking at as many undrafted dudes. All of our draft picks are making the team. I mean, what's stopping them, right? Like, we had plenty of roster space because we weren't super talented. The guys that were on the roster the year previous, you could replace a lot of those guys. They weren't all that good. So it was funny listening to so many of y'all be bent out of shape when they got rid of Jimmy Moreland. Jimmy Moreland has done exactly what in this league? But that's the type of shit we were hanging on to and crying when they got rid of him because we didn't have shit. And I've told you what happens when you don't have anything. If you've ever been poor or not having a lot growing up, then you know what it's like to cherish things that you get because you know, I always tell this story. We weren't poor growing up. But my mom made it abundantly clear. You're getting 2 pairs of shoes when this school year starts, and you're not getting another pair of kicks. So you do with them what you want, because her biggest thing was, bro, don't wear your school clothes outside. And, you know, when you're a kid and get home from school and your homework's already done, you know, and they're already like, yo, you coming outside? And you see other kids outside. As soon as they go in the house, they drop their book bags and they run back outside and they playing. You're like, yo, I want some of that action. Take you 5 minutes to take your shoes and your clothes off and put on some play clothes. But that's not how your brain works when you're 10, 11 years old. I'm going outside. You know what I learned real quick, though? When mom said you only getting 2 pairs of shoes, bro, you only getting 2 pairs of shoes. You know what that developed in me? The ability to take care of my shit. I had some dope-ass Ken Griffey's. Mom said, yo, I just dropped $120 on these shoes, bro. So your 2 pairs that you normally get, it's 1. But I wanted them bad. So she copped them for me, but she said, hey, you ain't getting another pair of shoes. I took care of those Ken Griffey's like they were newborn babies. That entire school year, you would have thought, bro, did you just take those out of the box? Nah, I done wore these 15 times, but you never be able to tell. And then I would accumulate more shoes because she'd buy me another pair, 2 pairs the next year. And I still had the pair from last year. And that's how my shoe game got where it got to. You start to cherish it. You hold on to things because you know it ain't shit else coming. And that's what we used to do to some of these players. We had a lot of trash ass dudes that we would put on these pedestals because we didn't have shit. Crying because this guy wasn't retained and we let this guy go and we should have did this. No, none of these guys are worth a damn. We don't have to do that shit no more, man. I wasn't mad they didn't pick up the 5th-year option on Chase. Let them earn that shit. I would have picked it up, but I get the financial ramifications of doing that, and I understand why they didn't do it, and I understand what they, you know, said to themselves. If he does it, then we'll pay him. If that's what needs to be done, we'll pay him. But just like Deron did last year, and I would have done it the same way with Deron. My guy Derek B always says they should have paid Deron sooner. In hindsight, yeah, they probably should have. I wouldn't have paid him a damn thing sooner. I would have did it exactly the way they did it. Show me in this last year, big fella. And he went out and had a career year. I'm expecting that. Coincidentally enough, I'm expecting that same type of meteoric rise this year from Montez Sweat, not Chase Young. But we'll see what happens. I'm looking for that from Sweat, not Young. But at the end of the day, we got talent on this team. Can you get the most out of that talent is the question. I don't know the answer to that, but we don't have a lot of space. And with that said, there's some dudes that are in roster trouble as we sit here on May the 18th. There's some dudes in roster trouble right now. And I'm saying, hey, man, they keep adding dudes. I don't know what this means for you, man. But if you got another level you can get to, now's the time to start tapping into that, because I don't know if you're going to make this roster, my guy. And that's why I posed the question that I posed to y'all last video, which it was, all right, give me 5 dudes who you look at after the dust has settled and the smoke is cleared from free agency, the draft. I don't see them doing much more to the roster now, right? Like, that post-draft, binge that you see some teams go on. We just haven't seen it. And maybe it'll come a little bit later. I haven't heard of one big name that's going to be a post-June 1 designation to be cut. I haven't heard one in, past years. I remember when June 1 meant something. That doesn't mean anything in the NFL anymore. So I don't think they're going to be doing too much more to the roster. You might get 1 or 2 guys that, like they did last year with John Ridgeway, where you get to the end of training camp and the end of the preseason, and some teams make some decisions, some tough decisions, and you look and you say, "Oh shit, that's a guy we really liked." All right, go ahead, scoop him up. But outside of that, I don't see them adding too many guys to this roster, because we don't have space, because we actually have a competitive roster. So with that said, I think I want to read some of your comments as to who you think is on the bubble, essentially, with this roster. So I'm gonna read some of these comments. And let's see. I'm gonna try to go, and I'm gonna just pick through a few. So good. It's not a whole heap of comments, so I might be able to get through most of these. Michael Starkey writes, Dax Milne, Sadiq Charles, Logan Thomas, Jared Anderson, Kendall Fuller. Wouldn't be surprised to see any of them traded or cut. I think the only name on that list that I feel like is safe is Kendall Fuller. I know every year there's a guy that Washington fans turn their backs on and are done with for whatever reason. 4 years ago, it was Landon Collins. Wasn't playing up to the level of his contract. And then, the next year he played out of his mind and everybody loved Landon. And then, the next year after that, they got rid of him. The year after that, it was Jonathan Allen. Everybody wanted to trade him for Deshaun Watson. Throw him in the deal. Yeah, we don't need him, right? Then they gave him the deal, and everybody was like, oh, yeah, Jonathan Allen's good. You weren't saying that the year before in the offseason. You wanted to trade him. Last year it was Daron Payne. Go ahead, move on from Daron Payne. Can't sign all of these defensive linemen anyway, right? Go ahead. Then he has a breakout year, and you re-sign Daron Payne. Get rid of Chase. He was the guy this year, right? Now that they've passed on the opportunity to pick up the 5th-year option. Now the guy is Kendall Fuller. He's the chic pick to not be here, because they drafted a corner in the 1st round and they got Benjamin St-Juste, got all these corners, and what are you going to do? Why do you need to get rid of anybody? So I don't agree. But to your point, wouldn't be surprised if anybody, on that list of guys isn't here. AJSTP003 writes, Norwell is insurance for possible injury, no growth, gambling, or Darius issues. Why release Fuller when the draft was for more depth? Fuller got interceptions and was healthy. Logan is team and position leader, now healthy. I agree with that. Like, a lot of people want to get rid of Logan Thomas, think he's going to end up gone. If they're going to do it, they did it already. Same with Andrew Norwell. He was not going to make this team. But that is the exact reason he's here. And I think I said that. He's here for insurance purposes, just in case you have a rash of injuries. You don't want to get rid of a guy, because one thing Ron has shown is that he's stubborn. When they release a guy, they are not going back to retrieve that player. We needed Landon Collins last year. They were like, nah, we good. They needed Eric Flowers last year, and they were too prideful, and they said, nah, we good. And so they're not going back to retrieve a player that they've released, even if he's still available. So they're not going to. The only time they've done that was with John Bostic. That's the only time they've done it. So I think Norwell is more of an insurance policy where you just want to make sure everything's copacetic at guard first before we move on. And then they get to the end of training camp, end of preseason, and everything's the way that it's supposed to be. And they'll move on from Andrew Norwell. And like you said, Logan Thomas, I thought he was just not used enough. He's finally healthy for the first time in probably a year and a half. And he's a team leader. I don't see him going anywhere. Same with Fuller. Like you said, a lot of people just seem to misremember, right? Like they seem to have selective memory when it comes to the cornerback position. Benjamin St. Juste hasn't played a full 17-game schedule in his career. His first 2 years have been marred by injuries. So you're going to get rid of the one guy that plays every week and substitute him in for a rookie and a guy that hasn't played a full season yet. Like, I don't understand the thought process of some of you. I mean, again, I'm not saying Fuller's going to be, the starter full season, but come week 1, I expect Kendall Fuller to be starting at that same left, spinning around that right cornerback position, RCB, right cornerback. Expect him to be right out there where he always is. So we'll see. Or is it left? I think it was left last year after William Jackson got hurt, because I think both of his pick sixes came from that right side of the offense. But if you flip it around, it would be left cornerback. So LCB. We'll see what happens. Wham Bam 21 says, can we talk about this tight end room? Because I legit think it's the worst in the league and everyone just assumes the young guys have talent. We can talk more about that as the night progresses. Coach Kev says, Antonio Gibson 1, James Smith-Williams 2, Sadiq Charles 3, Dax Milne 4. That was low-hanging fruit, and Logan Thomas 5. AG just seems to be the odd man out. We have 3 power backs, and the rookie has been getting third down reps. I understand that it's rookie minicamp, but where there's smoke? I think I've read a comment from him where he realized he was tripping on that. Yeah, he says, oh, by the way, Lou, I see your wheel spinning, and he did, clearly. He knew he was out of pocket. He says, saying, Kev, you lunching. Ain't no way they cut AG. I ask you this, he says, aside from pass blocking, can't Curtis Samuel do everything AG does? They might be equal in pass blocking too, with a couple of laughing emojis. No, they can't. He can't do everything Antonio Gibson does. Curtis Samuel isn't even 200 pounds. Like, I get what you're saying about the role that Gibson's going to be playing, which is like a Swiss Army knife, which Curtis Samuel is a Swiss Army knife. But they want Curtis Samuel to do what he did last year. Curtis Samuel was more of a receiver, right? Yeah, he could do a lot of things, jet sweeps, hand him the football, toss it to him out of the backfield, all that good stuff. But Curtis Samuel was a damn good receiver last year. Like, do you understand some of the biggest fourth down conversions came with Curtis Samuel last year? Like, Kurt Cole was everything for us last year. So they want him to continue to expand that role and let Antonio Gibson get comfortable, because a lot of people forget Antonio Gibson this is only year 4 of him converting from wide receiver to running back. So this is still a work in progress. And then they switched his role, and now they want him to kind of be a bit of a do-it-everything type of guy. And so we're going to see if he can flourish in this particular role. He's not getting cut, man. Yeah, right. You definitely was lunching. Okay. He says James Smith-Williams may not be able to stop KJ from overtaking his spot. The way that kid can shed blocks is something to be mindful of. JSW may end up on the practice squad. And there's some other, he went through the list here, and he says some honorable mentions, but safe for now. Jonathan Williams at running back, Charles Leno Jr., Danny Johnson, Cole Luke, and practice squad king Khaleke Hudson. There's another name he brought up. Now, Red Wings 01. I was joking on the podcast yesterday, but I was dead ass at the same time. He wrote me a War and Peace novel that I've never seen on YouTube before. I've never seen anything quite this long before. I cannot read all of this on the air. I can't. But it was worth the read. Like he literally sat at his computer. I hope he didn't do this on his phone. This is impossible. I'm hoping. I'm just gonna assume he did this on his computer, and he literally sat at his computer for 30 minutes and typed this. Okay, this took some time and effort, and I appreciate that, which is why I read everything. I'll give you his list though. Tyler Larson, and I'll just give you a couple pieces of what he said. He says, I know some people will say Sadiq or Leno should be here, but their spots are still safe for me. Leno is a captain, and while our left tackle starter, and while only viable left tackle starter, while Sadiq is still young and brings upside and versatility. Anyway, going off of how we traditionally kept 9 offensive linemen with 2 dedicated centers, 3 tackles, 4 guards, Larson might be the odd man out here. All right, so we go to the next one. He says, Cam Dantzler is 2. This will take a minute to explain. Of all of the position groups on our roster, the secondary will be by far the most competitive, so someone will have to be on the bubble, and I think it's Cam Dantzler. Honestly, this spot is really less about Dantzler and more about the entire bottom part of the secondary, but Dantzler is the most established of the bunch, so he's the guy I'm going with here. If our secondary is like last year, I expect us to keep 6 cornerbacks and 5 safeties. He went on to explain more, but I'll keep going for the sake of the show, because he really, like he said, it was a lot. He wrote like 4 paragraphs, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs on Cam Dantzler. So we'll just keep going, and we'll go to Dax Milne, he writes, personally, I think Dax gets way more hate than he deserves. I agree with that. He says, and I still believe in his ability as a wide receiver, but there's no question he has some competition to make the roster, especially since his days as our primary returner are over. The first 4 wide receiver spots are pretty much spoken for, but the final 2 or even 1 are up for grabs, and Dax may not even make it. I know they like Kashmir Allen, who's the favorite to take that gadget returner role, so he has an inside track to make the roster. And then there's the void left by Cam Sims, where we lack a big receiver. They brought in Marcus Kemp, and I also like rookies Bryson Tremaine, Mitchell Tinsley, and Jalen Sample, who all bring size and or physicality to the table. Special teams will also play special teams play also will determine who gets a spot, and Kemp has the inside track there. I do still think Dax has a solid shot at making it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't make the final cut. Number 4, he writes Casey Toohill. I love Toohill, but he's on the final year of his deal. We've drafted 2 new edge rushers. Andre Jones is bound to make the practice squad when it's all said and done, but I think Toohill will be the odd man out and lose his spot to KJ Henry. The team has always started with 4 D tackles and 5 D ends on the 53. Assuming health, we know who our 4 D tackles will be, and our first 4 D ends will be Chase Montez, Obata, and JSW. This pretty much leaves 1 final D end spot to be battled among the incumbent Toohill, third-year player William Bradley King, and rookies Joshua Pryor, Andre Jones, and KJ Henry. I think we all know who's going to win that battle. KJ's got a full 4 years on his deal and far more upside as a pass rusher than Toohill and any of the other guys. So some will say JSW should be here, but he's always been higher on the depth chart, is a good run defender, and has that coveted positional flex. So he's safe. That is as clean, concise, and direct as it gets, and I couldn't agree more with that every single word of that paragraph on Casey Toohill. 5th, he has Jonathan Williams. This one is pretty self-explanatory. I was tempted to go with David Mayo here, but I think the staff still likes him too much, and he has little in the way of competition. Not counting Alex Arma, who's a fullback, we got 5 running backs on the roster right now. I think the team will end up keeping 3 on the 53. Gibby, B-Rob, and C-Rod are all locks to make the roster. They could choose to keep 4, but in that case, I think they'll take Jaret Patterson over Williams. He stepped up admirably when he's had to, but he's 29-year-old power back, and it's obvious they drafted C-Rod to be his replacement. Those two and B-Rob are essentially the same type of player, so it feels like J. Will is kind of redundant now. Patterson is younger, cheaper, offers a different skill set with a smaller stature, and I believe has another year of practice squad eligibility. He also showed some real juice in that final Week 18 game against Dallas, so I think he has the leg up over J. Will. Maybe they'll both make the practice squad, but I think J. Will's days are numbered. So that was an excellent post, just a tidbit of an excellent post from Red Wings 01. Dennis Bartholomew writes, Logan Thomas, Jeremy Reeves, Dax Milne, Sadiq Charles, and Danny Johnson. Hey, it's Andre writes, Dax Milne, Jaret Patterson, Casey Toohill, Joey Sly, and he's got a eyeball emojis there, and hopefully David Mayo. Calvin Krim writes, John Bates, liability in pass game. De'Ami Brown, no separation. Dax Milne, better return options. And Sadiq Charles, last chance to prove. And then John Ridgway, injury / emergence of the Mathis. Terrence Mountain writes, Wild Goose, Fromm, Thomas, Milne, and Sadiq Charles. Asan Moore writes, my 5 are Kendall Fuller, John Bates, Charles Leno, Dax Milne, and Brian Robinson. What kind of a list is that? Absurda. Absurdera writes, hold on. Writes, B-Rob at running back 1, Fuller cut, Logan cut, Dax cut, Mayo cut, Leno cut. Fuller cut due to youth and cap, Logan due to lack of ability in the run game and scheme. Dax simply because he slept with, okay, enough of that one. That one didn't make much sense either. You're cutting starters, and there's no way that that's happening. Redskins Weekly writes, Jonathan Williams, Dax Milne, Christian Holmes, David Mayo, and Cornelius Lucas. Devin Henry writes, has to be Casey Toohill, definitely Dax Milne, Jake Fromm, David Bada, and last but not least, Troy Apke. All right. Inspirational D2 writes, Jake Fromm, Jonathan Williams, Dax Milne, Curtis Hodges, and Christian Holmes. Abdul Walton writes, Kendall Fuller, Casey Toohill, Sadiq Charles, Dax Milne, Troy Apke. Charles Reed writes, Troy Apke, William Bradley King, Jake Fromm, David Bada, and Jonathan Williams. Dax Milne, Rich writes, Dax Milne, in a world where they keep 6 receivers, I think he says De'Ami as a lock leaves 2 spots. And he says they like Kaz and Tinsley or others. So, see if we have an issue here. All right. Y'all still there? That was crazy, right? Y'all probably thought I was dead right there, right? Y'all thought I was gone. I thought I was gone. I thought it was coming back. Well, usually when that happens, it's a wrap. I'm shocked that it came back, but I wouldn't get rid of the broadcast just in case it came back. And what do you know? We back like cut crack. Don't ask me what the hell just happened. But I'm glad to be back, man. I'm glad to be back. So, I thought I was dead. I thought I was going to have to get on my cell phone, my cellular device, and stream the rest of this thing. But glad I don't have to do that now. So let's hope that we're good. For those of you who have been with me for a long time, y'all know that used to be a common occurrence when I had Cox Cable. They were the worst. But since I got Verizon, I don't have these issues anymore. And every so often, every now and again, these things crop up. Human error, these things happen. But for the most part, these streams have gone off without a hitch. So let's hope that it stays that way. Anyway. We were talking about Rich's comment, and he said Dax Milne was one, and he thinks that Kaz and Tinsley are guys that he think they like, and they could easily steal his spot. Casey Toohill, unlikely, but still in danger with us getting healthier and getting Andre Jones in the draft if he even makes it. Rashad Wildgoose, 2 new corners, one being a slot. Percy Butler may get some bump at that position too. On top of that, we got Fuller, BSJ, Forbes, Danzler, Quan, Tariq, who I like a lot, and Danny Johnson, and I don't see him beating out any of them. Sip, same reasons as Wild Goose. You can find another gunner. Sip is ass as a corner, so practice squad him, please. And Jonathan Williams was his 5th guy. Says, P.S. I try not to go for low-hanging fruit guys with 0 chance in most options. And let's go with Jason Bree, who writes, K. Fuller, Cornelius Lucas / Leno, Patterson, Dax Milne. By the way, our D-line rotation will be nice with Ridgeway and Mathis coming off the bench. Also like the Patoa kid and what he did in the Dallas game. So I think that was the problem for me with most of y'all. Not most of y'all, some of you guys, not all of you. I think the problem was that you guys cut guys that weren't going to make the team anyway. Like Jake Fromm isn't making his football team. So you don't need to talk about him being a guy that's in trouble. When I talk about this roster and I talk about the talent that we have, Jake Fromm is not included in that, right? So you don't have to cut him. Troy Apke is not in that discussion. You don't have to cut Troy Apke. He's not making his football team. We just talked about all the depth we have at corner and safety. You think Troy Apke's really going to be like that? Just goes to show you how far we've come. 2 years ago, Troy Apke made this team because we had an extra spot and we didn't have anybody else to fill it. So they could afford to keep Troy Apke because we didn't have any other guys. That was just 2 years ago. That's how far we've come to where Troy Apke shouldn't even be in your consciousness. You shouldn't look at the roster and Troy Apke's name shouldn't stick out like a sore thumb. He's not making his team. He didn't make it last year. So you don't need to name him. William Bradley King, you don't need to name him. He didn't make the team when we didn't even have depth at defensive end. Last year when Chase wasn't going to be there, and we were trying to figure out what the hell we were going to do with defensive end, he still didn't make the team last year. William Bradley King isn't making the team now with 2 new entries into the mix and a healthy Chase Young coming back on board. So you don't need to name him. You see what I'm saying? So Rashad Wildgoose, I'll let that one slide because he's young. And they might really like him and say, hey, he was thrown into a tough position last year, but, we really think this kid has some talent. He's not making the team. I don't think he's making the team. So I wouldn't have included him in the conversation. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to give you my list. All right. So I got 6 guys actually on my list. And I told you guys this yesterday, so I'm going to repeat it quickly just for the purposes of this conversation. This is assuming, and I'm glad most of you listened to me yesterday and didn't include Andrew Norwell. Some of you, I think I still had a Norwell in there, but for the purposes of this conversation, we're going to assume Andrew Norwell isn't making the roster. So we don't need to include him in this conversation. With that said, my first group, and mine are in kind of like groups because they're players at the same position that I think are in roster danger. Danger, Robinson. And the first two guys are Christian Holmes and Cam Dantzler for me. Sip is, and I thought my guy Rich kind of summed it up. Like right now, his claim to fame on this roster is that he's an elite gunner. That's good. And you need those. And with no, Cam Sims on this roster, if, and Percy Butler maybe getting a bigger role, we'll see. But Percy Butler, one of the things we drafted him is because he was an exceptional special teams player. So I feel like we got enough dudes that can do the gunner thing that we shouldn't have to keep a guy on the roster because he's an elite gunner, unless it's a tie and that's the differentiator, right? That's the tiebreaker, is he's better on special teams than the other guy. I just don't see that being the case here. Like, we got dudes that we think have a chance to be dogs on defense, right? On the defensive side of the football. That weighs more than special teams prowess. That outweighs, like, if this were a grading scale, your ability to play the actual cornerback position, that's like an exam. So that's half your grade right there. Playing special teams, that's like 30% of your grade. That's like tests and quizzes, right? We just lump those two together, call it 30% of your grade. That's a big deal, right? Special teams is a big deal. But it doesn't outweigh playing defense. If you're a good corner, and Christian Holmes, I always felt like when we got him in the 7th round, he was deficient at the cornerback position. But if he could play some damn good special teams, which he proved last year, then he'd have a chance. I don't think he has a chance. The cornerback position is the deepest position on the team right now. Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, Kendall Fuller, Danny Johnson, Tariq Castro Fields, right? Cam Dantzler. That's 6 dudes right there. All right. So Rashad Wildgoose, who was here last year, who they may actually really like, who's to say? That's 7. And then Christian Holmes is 8 at that position. I think they're going to keep 5 corners, and I think they're going to keep 5 safeties. Last year, I think they kept 4, if I'm not mistaken, corners and 5 safeties. I think that was the breakdown last year. And I'm gonna pull up the roster from last year, the final 53-man roster from a season ago. Commanders 2022 final 53-man roster. Something, I don't know why I feel like they kept 4. I was right. They kept 4 corners last year. Initially on the roster. Now they ended up going and getting Rashad Wildgoose eventually, and Castro Fields, Tariq Castro Fields. But William Jackson III, Benjamin St-Juste, Kendall Fuller, and Christian Holmes were the 4 corners, and they kept 5 safeties last year. So it was 9 DBs total. I think that number goes to 10 this year. I think they keep 5 corners and 5 safeties this year. And so with that said, Juice, Fuller, Forbes, and I'm not sure Danny Johnson is completely safe. I'm not sure he's completely safe, but I feel pretty confident. They gave him guaranteed money this offseason. They really loved what he did for them last year. And you know what's also interesting? I'm looking at Washington's roster right now. They have Jatavis Martin listed as a DB. They don't have him listed as a safety. They don't have him listed as a corner. He's listed as a DB. He's the only player on the roster with that designation. Interesting. I'll let your mind ponder as to what that means. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't count out Tariq Castro-Fields. This is why I think Danny Johnson isn't a lock. But I'm going to assume that Danny Johnson is going to be around. And so I'm not going to put, because you know I'm a Danny Johnson fan anyway. I'm not going to put Danny in that box. But Tariq Castro-Fields is a long corner. You know they like their longer corners. 6'1", 197 pounds, young, cornerback, can run like the wind. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. But I think Danny Johnson is 4, and then they're going to keep a 5th corner, and this is where the conversation starts. Tariq Castro-Fields, who is definitely young but could easily be stashed away on the practice squad again. Nobody's fighting you over Tariq Castro-Fields. Christian Holmes, 7th round pick. Nobody's fighting you over him either. And Cam Dantzler. And that's why those two are on this list. I think they're essentially battling it out for one spot. Cam Dantzler, Christian Holmes, Tariq Castro-Fields. I don't think they're keeping 6 corners. That's a robust number I don't think you can afford to keep with the roster setting up the way that it's setting up this year, with guys that you're going to want to keep and not sure if you're going to be able to pass them through waivers and get them back onto your practice squad. You got to be careful. You got to cut guys that you can get back. And you can get Christian Holmes back. You cut Cam Dantzler and he may end up on another roster. You cut Tariq Castro-Fields, you probably get him back. That's how we ended up with him, right? So I think they feel confident about, some of the guys that they have on the roster. And you got to play can we get this guy back game? And that's how you determine who you cut. And I think you can get Christian Holmes and Tariq Castro-Fields back on your roster. You cut Danny Johnson, you may not get him back. You cut Cam Dantzler, you may not get him back. But I think Dantzler is going to have to play well. He can't be injured in camp. He can't come out here and half-ass it. He's got to play his ass off. Because the luster that he had when we first scooped him up off of waivers, when we put that waiver claim in, that shit is already faded with the drafting of Emmanuel Forbes. We ain't thinking about him anymore. So, Dantzler's going to have to play ball, but I think Dantzler and Holmes, you could throw in Castro-Fields if you like. They're battling for one spot, if you ask me. One spot. So those are the first 2 guys. The next combo at a position is linebacker. And Milo Eifler and Dejon Harris. And I know I said, don't add guys in that didn't make the team, that aren't going to make the team. Well, both of those guys made the team last year. Dejon Harris and Milo Eifler were on the team last year, and Milo Eifler was on the team the year before that as well. So, Milo Eifler, and remember when we were talking about the draft process, and I was like, look, man, I'm done with the Milo Eifler experience, right? An experiment. For whatever reason, they love them some Milo Eifler, yet he never ends up on the football field in a defensive capacity, only special teams. And I get it. They shitted on the linebacker position as a whole last year. Period. And we were able to get away with it for the first 6 weeks of the season. Then Cole Holcomb got hurt in week 7, and all hell broke loose. Then they had to start playing around with the safety position and bringing those guys down as linebackers, and that's the way that they were able to circumvent the injury. But I talked about during the draft process, we need to take a linebacker at some point because I'm done with the Milo Eifler experiment. Unless you can prove to me that he can actually play, why is he here? And then I did the thing that I thought they were going to do. And I made my mock draft and I said, they're not taking a linebacker, folks. And what did they do? They did not take a linebacker. So what's interesting is that last year, going back to the 53-man roster, they only kept 5 linebackers: Cole Holcomb, Jamin Davis, David Mayo, Milo Eifler, Dejon Harris. All right, 5 guys. Nothing has really changed with that group other than you swap out Cole Holcomb for Cody Barton, right? However, the roster defensively is going to look different this year because they had 5 safeties on the roster last year. You're going to have 5 this year. Because all you're doing this year is just swapping out Bobby McCain for Quan Martin. That's it. So you're going to still have 5 safeties. They're going to add an extra corner. They only had 4 on the final 53 last year. You're going to have 5 this year. You only had 5 defensive ends last year. I'm not sure that you don't have 6 this year. Because you had Shaka Toney, Montez Sweat, Casey Toohill, James Smith-Williams, F.A. Obata. Obviously, Chase Young's going to take Shaka Toney's position. They could go with 5. I stand corrected on that. So I think they're going to leave it at 5. You have 5 on the D line and or D ends, and then 4 at defensive tackle like they had last year. And you got to trim off that one roster position for the cornerback. To add another cornerback, you got to subtract from somewhere. I think they're going to subtract from linebacker. Instead of 5 linebackers, you only need 4, so you can have 5 corners. And in doing that, you're dropping one of these dudes off at the bus stop. So it ain't going to be Cody Barton. It's not going to be Jamin Davis. It's not going to be David Mayo. For all of you David Mayo non-lovers out there, you don't like mayo on your sandwich? Sorry, he's back again. Get you a nice glob of mayo, man. Spread it nice and thin. All right. So that leaves one spot for Milo Eifler and Dejon Harris. 2 guys, 1 spot. Not keeping 5 linebackers this year, just 4. So those are the first 4 names on my list. Now you get to individuals, not necessarily fighting, another guy at their respective position. You could be fighting another guy at a different position, but you just fighting. But more likely than not, you're fighting somebody at your position. Start with Dax Milne. All right. Dax Milne, I agree wholeheartedly with Red Wings 01, who said that Dax Milne probably gets way more hate than he deserves. I agree with that because a lot of people associate his ability to play receiver with his ability to return punts, and that's not fair. You have to be able to isolate the two. They're not one and the same. Those are 2 separate entities. All right. And a lot of people just lump them together and make that the entire Dax Milne package. And that's not fair to him because he was brought here on his receiving merit when he was drafted in the 7th round. He wasn't drafted to be a returns guy. He got thrusted into that role because they saw fit to not bring back DeAndre Carter, and it put them in a tough spot. And he was the only guy that was adequate enough to do it and had experience in college. So much like Red Wing 01 said, I like him as a receiver. My thing was, and I said this earlier, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago on the video. If he can't survive on his own merit as a receiver, then he has to go. Because I'm not here to judge him on his ability to return kicks. That's not what he was brought here to do in the first place. And I'm not going to hold that against him. if he can play the receiver position, and we've seen flashes from him. The touchdown catch against Minnesota, that was a great whip route he ran to get open and get to the pylon. Like, if he has the ability to play the receiver position at a high level, then there should be a spot here for him on this football team. If that's good enough, but if it's not, then he has to go. And I think Red Wings had already established this, but he said 4 spots are already spoken for at receiver. We know this to be a truth. Last year, they kept 6 receivers. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they do that again. Let's look on the offensive side. They're not keeping 3 quarterbacks this year. So you can take quarterback out of that mix. They kept 3 last year because Sam was a rookie. So they had to keep Sam in order to not lose him. They don't have to do that this year. Sam's starting. Jacoby's backing him up. You don't need a 3rd quarterback. Jake Fromm won't be on the roster. He'll be on the practice squad. Nobody's fighting you over Jake Fromm. He'll be on the practice squad. They kept 4 running backs last year. I think they're going to do the same thing this year. Now, if they're looking for a spot, this is assuming that Chris Rodriguez can play special teams, and he already said, I'll do whatever they ask me to do, which is the right answer. Assuming that they don't need the roster spot, they're going to keep 4 running backs again. If they need a spot, I think you can come to running back and snatch one away. Just like you're taking a quarterback away. If you need a spot, you can come and get it from running back, if need be. I don't think they will. I think they'll keep 4 running backs, which is why I'm not counting Jonathan Williams out yet. A lot of you had him on your list. That's a really good name to have, because if they need a position, they're coming for Jonathan Williams' spot. And to your point, if they keep a 4th running back, and I think it was Red Wings who said this, if they keep a 4th running back, it could be Jaret Patterson, who I was impressed with. And just like Red Wings 01 said, most of us were impressed with in week 18. I said, that was as good as I've seen from Jaret Patterson in his career. And I was intrigued, and I said I wanted to see more. And they might want to see more too. So, again, that 4th running back has to be able to play special teams. I know Jonathan Williams can play special teams. Can Jaret Patterson play special teams effectively? That remains to be seen. I think that's the reason why I don't have him making the football team over Jonathan Williams right now, is because I know Jonathan Williams can play special teams. I'm not sure that they're confident in Jaret Patterson's ability to be able to do the same. But they kept 6 receivers, sticking on topic with Dax Milne. Jahan Dotson, De'Ami Brown, Curtis Samuel, Dax Milne, Terry McLaurin, Cam Sims. So we know Terry, Curtis, De'Ami, Jahan, locks. All 4 of them are making the team. So now the question is it 5 or 6 receivers? Okay. If it's 6 again, I think Dax is making the team, because now he'll have an opportunity to make the team on his own merit, not as a special teams guy. And then Cam Sims' spot might be taken by a big receiver. But then you start thinking to yourself, if they really want to add someone to return punts and kickoffs like Kaz Allen, are you going to suck away a running back? Are you going to subtract a running back and add him to the receiver room and keep Dax Milne and go with 7 receivers? We've seen that done in Washington before too. Or are you going to get rid of one of the receivers, keep 4 running backs, and now Dax Milne could be on the way out, depending on how they feel about these big receivers? As you guys have mentioned, they got some big guys, Jalen Sample, Tinsley. We know they went out and got Marcus Kemp, who's very familiar with Eric Bieniemy. So if they're looking to fill that big wide receiver role, they've got options. And Dax Milne could be on the way out, and that's why he's on this list for me. It's going to be tough for him to crack this roster. He's going to probably need some things to go in his favor. And then the last name on this list is Casey Toohill. And Casey Toohill, for a very long time, was the butt of jokes for me. One of my favorite lines was, who are they going to put on the field? Casey Toohill? No, they actually were putting Casey Toohill on the field. And you know what? Casey wasn't that damn bad. He caught a bad rap when he first got here. He was the guy that I always pointed to because I couldn't stand when Montez Sweat and Chase Young were on the sideline sucking wind at the same time. Like, you got to stagger that shit. I liken it to in the NBA when you got star players in your starting lineup, you got to keep one or two of those starters on the court with the backups. You can't just sub in 5 dudes, as backups and say, all right, y'all carry this second unit. No, I need 1 or 2 of those star players to be on the court. You can't have everybody on the bench at the same time. That's what we were doing at defensive end. I was like, you can't have both of those dudes over on the sidelines at the same time. There should always be one of them in the game, always. And I would be irate when James Smith-Williams and Casey Toohill would be in. But then we got to a point where we didn't have a choice. There was no Chase Young at the end of 2021, and there was no Montez Sweat at the end of 2021. And we had no choice but to put those two on the field. And it actually wasn't that bad. So over time, we've gotten much more fonder of Casey Toohill. I think his gritty at the end of the Eagles game on Monday night last year will go down as one of the more satisfying moments of recent memory. Him scooping up that lateral, going into the end zone, and doing one of the widest gritties we've ever seen was a thing of beauty. It brings joy to my heart every time I watch it. He'll forever be in my memory banks just off the strength of that one moment in time. However, we talked about this already, and I think Red Wings 01 said it eloquently. At the end of the day, they're probably keeping 5 defensive ends. We know 4 of them already. James Smith-Williams, to me, is a guy that they don't like, they love. They love James Smith-Williams. And you know what? I've taken a strong liking to him as well. Does his job, doesn't say much, not gonna, fill up the stat sheet necessarily, but he's gonna do his damn job. He's gonna set a physical edge in the run game. Every now and again, he'll get some pressure on the quarterback. You'll never have a bad thing to say about James Smith-Williams. And oh, by the way, there is that whole positional flex thing they love to bring up. He's not going anywhere. And to Red Wings 01's point, he's the next guy on the depth chart. After Sweat and Young, the first name is James Smith-Williams. So he's not in danger of being cut. KJ Henry is making his football team. We know that, right? And F.A. Obata, I think, is making his football team. Now, F.A. is not a guarantee. If F.A. suffers something in the offseason or in camp or whatever, and, Toohill's healthy, that could be Toohill's way in. But assuming health, which is what I'm going to do, F.A.'s the better player. F.A.'s the better player right now. And because everybody's on 1-year deals, it's not like, you're going to cut the guy that has 1 year left on his deal versus a guy that's got 3 years. Nah, that's not the case. Everybody's on a 1-year deal, to Red Wings 01's point again. So it's not like there's a benefit to holding on to Casey Toohill. So we don't even have to discuss KJ Henry. He's making a team. F.A., I think he's making the team. James Smith-Williams, definitely making the team. And we know Chase and Sweat are your starters. So Casey Toohill is definitely on the bubble. There could be a scenario here where they keep 6 defensive ends. They don't want to cut him loose. Don't think they can get him onto the practice squad. Maybe they trim off some fat. Again, you can always go to that running back position if you need to. You can always go there if you need to. But I don't know if they'll decide to keep 6 and trim off fat somewhere else. I think they're just going to stick with 5, and Casey Toohill's the odd man out. Again, that's a great problem to have. So that's pretty much where we are with this. Those are my 6 guys. Some of you had some really good names on your list as well. But at the end of the day, they're going to have some tough decisions to make on the back end of the roster, which is why I told you guys we didn't need to have 10, 11 picks. We don't have 10, 11 spots available on this roster. And that draft wasn't good enough to be acquiring more picks to pick up more players, which is why I told you guys trading back wasn't really in the cards for me in this year's draft, which Washington didn't trade back, right? I told you trading back wasn't real. Trading up was more of the thing. Less picks, more quality. That was what they should have been doing, and that's what they did. Maybe they could have done it a little sooner. Maybe. But at the end of the day, moving back wasn't really an option for me because you don't want more picks because the roster, you just don't have space for these dudes. And you like the players that you have on your roster. You're not trying to cut a guy that still has 3 years left on their rookie deal. You're not looking to upgrade certain positions on this team. You just didn't need to do that. You have what you have. You're good at certain positions. And so I think that's how I feel. And, you know, I think one of the ones that I do want to bring up because it was interesting was the center that Red Wing 01 brought up. Let me go. I'm blanking on his name. I'll just pull it up real quick. The center is Tyler Larson. I was looking at Tyler Larson, and you know what's funny? I was looking at this roster the other day, and one of the reasons I picked out a couple names on this roster is because of their age. I want y'all to guess how many 30-somethings. I'm looking at a roster right now that has 90 players on it. I'm looking at a 90-man roster right now in front of me. Okay, 90 players. I want you to guess how many. Leave it in the comment section. You don't have to put Louis T Live or anything. Just put the number down. I want you to guess how many players currently on the roster are 30 years of age or older. I want you to guess. I want you to guess. Put it down in the comment section. How many players on this roster are 30 years of age or older? Out of 90 players, how many are 30 years of age or older? And this is why when I brought up Jared Jones-Smith on my video yesterday, I said he's got a shot because he's 27. And Cornelius Lucas is 31. And they're looking for a younger option as a swing tackle. This is why, you guys know, you know me, you know how I operate. Guys that get signed this time of the year, I say, look, get out of my face. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't talk about UDFAs. I don't talk about guys that get signed this time of the year because generally those guys don't stand a chance barring some kind of catastrophes. Amani Rodgers doesn't make the team unless what happened last year at tight end. Literally every tight end got injured and he was the last man standing and that's how he made the team. Something like that would have to happen for guys that get signed at this time of the year to make the football team. Or there's got to be a specific role that you feel that nobody else does, and that's how you get it in onto the roster. All right, I'm going to start reading some of these numbers off. All right. Right wall says 12. Unknown Ism says 15. Bullets says 11. Miss Perry says 6. Jamal Hamlin says 8. Brandon Thomas says 12. E says 9. Video Channel says 5. Need for Blaze says 13. CJ Shoots Photo says 3. Big Simple says 3. Eddie Behringer says 7. Tyler C says 8. 3. Right wall says 3 is way too low. It is way too low. No way you're going to have a roster with just 3 guys 30 or more years old. Loki Not Loki says 6. Larry Alderman says 7. DJ23 says 3. William Minot says 8. Alex Hoy says 11. Foot Model says 4. Ralph says 4. Jeremiah Stafford says 4. If you said 8, Tyler C said 8. Jamal Hamlin says 8. You are correct. It is 8 players on the roster, 30 years of age or older out of 90 players. Only 8. We've got to be, and I'm not saying we are, we've got to be one of the younger rosters in all of the NFL. Got to be. There are more guys 27 years of age and younger on this roster than I can remember in recent memory. Now there's 4 guys that are 29. And of those 29-year-olds, Alex Arma, David Mayo, Trent Scott, and Jonathan Williams, none of them may make the roster other than David Mayo. Mayo's going to make the football team. As long as he's healthy, David Mayo's going to make the football team. But outside of Mayo, none of these guys are locks to make the roster. I think Jonathan Williams has a good shot at making it if he's healthy as well. But everybody else is 28 years of age or younger. That's the type of time we're on right now. So it goes to show you what we're doing roster-wise and what direction they're heading in. And in saying that, it makes me feel like they're looking to get younger. And a guy like Tyler Larsen could be the odd man out on a line that is young, and they're looking to get younger. Nick Gates is what, 27, 28? See where Nick Gates falls into this equation. Nick Gates is 27. Ricky Stromberg is probably 23. Let me see where Ricky Stromberg is in this equation. Ricky Stromberg is 22 years old. They're looking to get younger. Andrew Wiley is 28. Cornelius Lucas or Charles Leno Jr. has to be pushing. He's got to be one of the 30-somethings on the roster. He's 31, which is why he could be, again, if they find a diamond in the rough, one of these young guys can play tackle, they'll get rid of his ass. I don't think they're going to get rid of him now, but they're looking to get younger. If Cornelius Lucas and Charles Leno are if they're on this roster, which I assume they're going to be, right? I don't imagine any, drastic changes from here on out. But if they're on the roster this year, those guys aren't going to be on the team next year. Neither one of them. They're hoping that Jarrett Jones-Smith and or Braden Daniels, somebody steps up and says, hey, I'll be your swing tackle of the future. They're hoping Braden Daniels is their starting left tackle next year. Hell, they're hoping he come in and beat this year. It's not going to happen. But they would love it if he would have come in at 305 to start, training camp in tremendous shape and just caught on to the offense and, just mauling dude. They would love it if he just came in and took a stranglehold of one of the tackle positions. Highly unlikely. But they're looking to get younger. So that's been their philosophy since they got here. That could all change if Ron gets fired. They bring in a new GM, and that new GM may not have the same philosophical approach of I want to be young. Ron learned from his last stint in Carolina where he got old overnight and it killed him. And ultimately, he felt like it doomed him as a coach. He said, I'm not doing that when I get another opportunity. And the first thing he said when he got to Washington is, I will not allow this roster to get old. And he's stuck true to his word. So a guy like Tyler Larsen could be the odd man out in a scenario where they got a bunch of young players that they like, and somebody's got to go, and it could be the 31-year-old. And they only signed him to a 1-year deal. So it's not like they owe him a ton of money or there's any real guarantees. Like, he can go. The assumption that I've made, though, is they've had so many problems at center over the last 2 years in particular that I don't think they want to be without a third center on the roster. They're scared to death of being in that scenario again. And Larsen being on the roster offers you an insurance policy that you won't have to go through that again, no matter what. Would they like to, be able to, because they can't put him on the practice squad. He's not practice squad eligible at this point. He's played too much football in the league. So I don't think that exists anymore. I don't think that matters anymore. I think they removed that whole, years played type of thing. I think you could put anybody, no matter how long they've been in the league or played, put anybody on the practice squad. So I don't think that matters anymore. Since COVID hit and they made all those adjustments to the practice squad, but Larson's good enough that if you cut him, you may not get him back. Plain and simple. So that's an interesting one though. Red Wings 01. CJ Shoots photo writes, according to Sport Rack, the Browns have the youngest roster at 25 years, 3 months. Lions at 25, 4 months. Jags at 25, 5 months and some change. Cowboys and Giants at 25 and almost 6 months. And Washington and the Eagles. And then Washington is 12th. So we're top half of the league in age. And I'd guess somewhere in our age is probably somewhere in the 27, like low 27, like 27.1 or 2, something like that. That'd be my guess. But we got a relatively young roster, and that's the way it should be, by the way. That's the way you should build your NFL roster. So thank you for that as well. So now I'm going to get to the comment section and the super chats. I'm so glad that the stream did not end at the hour and 30-minute mark or wherever we were at the time of that little snafu that we had. I just saw that the Lakers lost game 2. They're down 0-2 in the series. The series is not over, but it gets a lot more daunting now. What they did, though, tonight is effectively prove that they can compete at a high level in Denver, but you got to win, right? All Denver has to do is win all of the games at home. They don't have to win a game. This is why it's important to win on the road in the NBA playoffs, is because Denver doesn't have to do, as the higher seeded team, you don't have to do anything but protect home court. Lakers could go home, win both games, and nothing has changed. All Denver has to do is win game 5 at home. Then all the pressure swings back to LA to keep the series alive. And then Denver just has to win game 7 at home. Again, Denver's just looking to steal one on the road now at this point. They're playing with house money. They've done what they needed to do. So anyway, I digress. Quentin Ruiz, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Quentin writes, Danny gone. My Spurs get the first pick. I'm living. And you're living right. Kind of felt like the Spurs were going to get the number 1 overall pick. I felt like Pop was hanging on for a reason. Because my wife is a Spurs fan. And Pop had no reason to hang on. They were trash. They've been trading all their assets. They got rid of DeJounte Murray. They had nothing left. They were absolutely garbage can juice this year. And Pop was hanging on because he knew there was a chance. And they got a bunch of picks. They've been trading away all their assets. They got a chance to get good really quickly. If Wemby is what everybody says he is, we'll see what happens. But good. That's good for you, man. It's tough when your team absolutely sucks. So that's good for you. I've been there before. Trust me. Been there. Not just with Washington, but with my other teams too. Mike Jank, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Mike Jank writes, Louie Lou, what's up, my boy? What's going on, Mike? Says, hand the keys over to Tyus Jones. King Von Jr. don't want to hoop anymore. Yeah, man. It's unfortunate that we've gotten to this point. This is why you bring back a guy like Tyus Jones, not necessarily because of this, just because you expect Ja to miss games, not because of suspension, but just because you expect the wear and tear of the NBA, a guy that likes to, do a lot of his damage in the paint, that's slight of build to begin with. You expect him to end up getting injured, miss some games throughout the season. You need a guy like Tyus Jones, who's a starting caliber point guard in the league as a backup. Now he's going to have to take the keys and drive this car for probably the first 30 to 40 games of the season. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And Ja'll come back. He'll tear shit up when he gets back. But up until then, we just got to survive. We may not thrive, but we just got to survive until Ja gets back. So this is why you have a guy like Tyus Jones. Without him, we'd be screwed right now. But we're fine. We'll be all right. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. I got video channel rights. C-Rod about to be Washington's Pacheco. No, I don't see that. You see, so I could understand why you would want to make that correlation, because Pacheco was a 7th round pick. He ended up taking over the starter's role. Remember, they spent a 1st round pick on Clyde Edwards-Helaire some 3 years ago, and Pacheco came in and just give me that shit. Just took his starting spot from him. And it allowed the Chiefs to not pick up Clyde Edwards-Helaire's, 5th round option, or fifth year option rather, with that vaunted 2020 class of first rounders who haven't had their 5th year option picked up. Astronomical numbers that we've never seen in NFL history. Only 12 guys had their 5th year option picked up or had a contract re-signed out of that 1st round. 20 guys declined 5th year option or no longer in the league or no longer with the team that drafted them. Mind-boggling. He's a part of that. He was the final pick in the 1st round in 2020 was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But they didn't have a guy at running back, which is why Pacheco was able to come in there. Like Edwards-Helaire was already a smaller back. He'd already missed time. He made it easy on Isaiah Pacheco to come in there, run hard, and take his spot. That's not what we have going on at running back. We got 2 dudes in front of C-Rod. There's no way he's coming in here and getting the kind of touches that Pacheco got, unless, and again, I'm not speaking that into existence, but you know what I'm talking about, unless something like that were to occur. But if those guys are upright, moving around, ain't no way. Ain't no way. Saucy Drip. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Saucy Drip writes, we play some good offenses this year. Yeah, we do. Which is why I'm worried about the defense. Which is why I told you over and over again, I'm not 100% certain about our defense this year, because I know that the last time we were in a position like this, we did not fare well. We weren't as good. Like, we had our deficiencies in 2021. We were smelling ourselves too, though. Remember, Young and Sweat were talking that setting a record for the most sacks by a tandem in league history talk. And, we had dominated, the back end of our schedule with a lot of bad quarterbacks the year prior. And so we were smelling ourselves. Chase Young was doing Chipotle commercials and on Family Feud and everything but football, right? So we thought we had arrived. Ron had even said it. These dudes think they've arrived, and they haven't. And Ron saw it coming. He said it before the season. Like, it's a lot of dudes that they're buying their own stock right now. They smelling themselves, and they not smelling what we smelling. We smell your shit. You think it's all jasmine and lavender, and nah, your shit don't smell like mint julep. You stink right now. I don't think you have that same mindset. Chase Young is out to, prove that Washington should have picked up the 5th year option. You got a lot of dudes out to task right now. Like, they out here looking for the bag. So I think this is a different defensive unit. They're hungrier. And I think we're better in the secondary, better up front, a more experienced defensive line. In 2021, Deron Payne was still trying to figure some shit out. Same with Jonathan Allen. Also, you had a defensive line coach that wasn't the best still on board in Sam Mills III. And so It's a little bit different. The circumstances are a little bit different, but the level of competition has definitely changed drastically from last year to this year. And so I'm anxious to see how we handle that. I really, truly am. Fat American is back with facts and racks. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Fat American writes, did Dan Snyder sail the team yet? I know what that is in reference to. I hear that Dan Snyder will be sailing the team if he hasn't already sold it. Be right back. McDonald's has Big Macs on sale. I see what you did there. I see what you did there. I'm not gonna kill him here, but for those of you who follow me on Twitter in particular, you know exactly what Fat American is doing there. And shit happens, man. I'm not here to kill people. All I did was try to point out, hey, look, I think you meant to say something else. He tried to spin it like he meant to say that. No, that's not what you meant, but whatever. Malachi Malik, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, could you see Ron moving to upper management and Eric taking over as head coach? No. I've heard that so many times. First of all, who said that Ron Rivera was a great, executive? Who said Ron Rivera was a great personnel guy? Like, nobody's ever said that. I'm not telling you that Ron's been a tremendous evaluator of talent or anything like that. What I'm telling you is he's done a really good job of putting this roster in a position to compete at a high level. That's what he's done effectively, along with other members of the staff, Eric Stokes, Martin Mayhew, Marty Herney and company, Chris Polian. They've all, kind of banded together and helped this roster get to the point that it's at right now. So with that said, you have to give them credit, but by no means have I went as far as to say Ron has done a tremendous job and needs to be in the front office. Furthermore, Ron Rivera isn't looking to be in the front office. Ron Rivera wants to coach football. Okay. I've never heard Ron utter any words that lend us to believe that he desires to be in a front office or a management position. Ron wants to coach ball. That's his life. He's a lifer. He wants to coach ball. He's not looking for Eric Bieniemy to take his job. He's looking to give Eric Bieniemy an opportunity somewhere else to be his own head coach. Ron said, I was given an opportunity by Andy Reid and by, other coaches. Lovie Smith in particular was where he finally got his break to be a defensive coordinator, right? After, interviewing multiple times, he finally was able to get a head coaching job. And so he's like, I'm just looking to pay it forward. Somebody gave me an opportunity. Now I'm looking to give you an opportunity. And one thing I can say Ron has done very effectively throughout his career is he's molded guys who have gone on to be head coaches. Now, not always effectively, okay? Steve Wilkes didn't work out in Arizona, but Ron put him in a position to help him get a job. Sean McDermott in Buffalo has worked out pretty damn good for the Bills. Ron put him in a position and he took advantage. And I can see Ron putting Eric Bieniemy in a position to get an opportunity, take advantage, and get a head coaching gig. And that's what Ron is hoping. Ron isn't looking for Eric Bieniemy to take his job here. Although that may be ultimately what Ron has effectively done. But and Ron would tell you, if he takes my job, that means I didn't do a good enough job. But that's not what Ron brought him here to do. Ron brought him here to help him save his job, to kill it as an offensive coordinator, help this team win 11 games, and help him propel himself to a head coaching gig, all the while helping Ron keep his job here in Washington. So, no, I don't see that happening. And I can't see any scenario in which that takes place. Benjamin Slade, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Benjamin writes, I heard Harris tanked with the 76ers. NBA ain't the NFL, but if how isn't the answer, is Harris a owner that would tank? I think it would be good this year too. Should I be concerned with this owner? If not, So yeah, there's no such thing as tanking in the NFL. So the biggest difference being in the NBA, you can control outcomes of games by simply just sitting down players that make a difference. There's only 15 guys on an NBA roster and only 5 on the court at any given moment, right? So if you take all the veterans, and we've seen this done in the NBA where they, like, for instance, OKC literally told Al Horford to go home 2 years ago. Al, we love you. Great veteran presence. We got a really young team. You're going to help us win games. We want to suck. They didn't say this, but their actions spoke loud enough that we all understood what they told Al Horford, we'll pay you. Go home. Don't worry about it. Al's like, but I can still help you. No. Al, it's okay. We're going to trade you at the trade deadline. But until then, go home for these last 20 games before the trade deadline. We don't need you. We suck already. Okay. We see that the Houston Rockets, they told John Wall, go home. We're going to trade you or we'll buy you out. John Wall's like, bro, I'm averaging 17 points. I'm playing good basketball. No, John, you're not understanding, bro. You helping us win. We don't want to win games. Go home. If we can't find a trade partner, we'll buy you out. You can tank in the NBA. You can put 5 dudes on the court who are not ready to help you win a damn thing in the NBA. And we all know the NBA is an old man's game. The older you are, the more experienced you are, and the tougher and more physical you are. These young boys coming in the league, and they ain't ready to bang with these dudes that are 28, 29, 30 years old, 31, 32 years old. They ain't ready to bang. These guys coming in 180 pounds soaking wet. These dudes are 220 pounds, seasoned veterans. They ain't ready for that shit. So you put their ass in the game and they're going to get their ass mopped. Can't do that in the NFL. These dudes out here starving. You sit a dude down, a veteran down, and the next dude is coming in playing for his life. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Ain't no such thing as tanking in the NFL. Because you can't tell another man, hey, we trying to lose. He ain't trying to hear that shit. Are you going to pay his bills next year when a new coach comes in and starts cutting people? Are you going to tell the other 31 teams, nah. He's actually a really good player. We told him to suck. So don't mind this tape of him going out here making an ass out of himself. He's actually a much better player than that. Nah, they're not going to go vouch for you. You put bad tape out there, that's going to end up with that's going to have you ending up with a one-way ticket out the league. Now you playing in the XFL or the USFL. Players ain't going for that shit. They get an opportunity. They trying to take full advantage of that opportunity so they stay in the league. Same thing they're doing in the NBA. They're just not good enough. NFL is totally different. So there's no such thing as tanking in the NFL. Whether you want to or not, it ain't happening. The only way you can truly tank in the NFL is if you take out a starting quarterback that's good and replace him with a Jake Fromm type guy. Now, and that's obvious. Nobody's doing that. You lose a whole locker room when you do that. Ain't no way coaches. You as a coach, you're blackballing yourself if you do that. Remember when Brian Flores called into question the Miami Dolphins organization and their will to win? Remember how appalled everybody was? If this is true, oh my God. That should have never happened in the NFL. You can try, but it ain't going to happen. Can't do it. It's too many dudes, too. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou. Hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise, Chris, man. Appreciate that. What do you think is the underlying reason the defense does not force more turnovers in the games? Execution, mindset, coaching, or something else? I think it's all of the above. I watch football every single game. Every single week I watch the games. And I tell you this all the time. There's a level of aggression, and some of this is innate. Some guys just have like Josh Norman has an innate ability to just go for the football. He sees a guy running with the ball, and he's just going to try to punch it out. That's just his thing, right? Some guys just have that mindset where I'm going after the ball. And you don't have to teach them that. Some guys need to be taught that. It's just not in their DNA to just aggressively go after the ball. So you have to go above and beyond the call of duty, and you have to go out of your way to teach these dudes, this is what we're looking for. We got to get the ball out. And they claim turnover Thursdays. They're not doing it. We don't see enough attempts at the football. We don't see enough punches. We don't see enough lawnmowers where guys are ripping in and trying to pull it out. We don't see that shit at all with our guys. We just don't. I watch games around the league, and guys are aggressively going for the rock, punching it out. Hey, you know how Darius Leonard punches the ball out? Like, it's an art to it, but that's a mindset. He's thinking about getting the ball out. That's the first part of forcing a turnover is you got to be looking to take the shit away. We looking to get our job done, get the guy on the ground. We're not thinking about getting the ball out. And then, another thing is you just got to be around the rock. You got to be aware. You can't just do your job. You got to do your job and then some. Case in point, you're playing zone, right? And a guy runs into your zone. Don't just see a guy running into your zone and just stand there like, okay, he's in my zone. I'm here. He's here. No, match him. Okay, now he's in your zone. Run with him until he's no longer in your zone and you pass him off to another defender. Run with him. There's nobody in your zone. So this is what elite defenders do on the backside of play action fake. All right. So you're playing cover 3. And this is what Kendall Fuller does all the time, which, he doesn't always pick it off, but he's there, right? Because this is what good corners do. You're on the backside of a play action fake. They're running a deep post on the opposite side of the field. And you got deeper than the deepest, wider than the widest on your side, on your third of the field. But nobody runs a deep route, right? So what do you do as a corner? You've already gotten the depth. You're already back there, and you see this corner, on the other side of the field having to run with this dude, and that post is taking him to your side of the field. You shouldn't be there technically because the route on the other side of the field hasn't taken you down the field. They did that on purpose. That other corner should not be back there unless he's aware enough to know they're running a backside post. I can get over there and make a play. Quarterback never sees the backside corner, by the way, because that guy's not supposed to be there. The route they ran an out route, a 7-yard out to occupy that corner, keep him out of the picture while that deep post is supposed to be doing some work on the backside, and that guy's able to run all the way across the field away from that corner to the football, right? If you're the backside corner and you don't have a responsibility, don't just say, well, hey, did my job. A little 7-yard out, I'm here. No. Be aware enough to see that there's a backside post and you've got depth already. Get your ass back there and see if you can't pick the shit off. Quarterback doesn't see you. And that's what Kendall Fuller did last year against Dallas, and then his ass tripped and fell. He would have picked the shit off. And it didn't matter because William Jackson, the third stinking ass, pulled down the damn receiver anyway, and they threw a pass interference flag. But I'm like, it's 2 of y'all there and nobody comes up with the ball. Fuller falls. William Jackson, the third, panics. He's in great position. Tackles goddamn Michael Gallup, and it's a 45-yard pass interference. It should have been picked off. Good teams that create turnovers don't miss those opportunities. They take that shit away. Good teams tip balls in the air, right? Quarterback gets greedy, tries to force one in there, but because you got a tight zone, 3 dudes are around the ball, right? Our zones are never tight. So guy sits down in our zone and he's wide ass open because we don't match guys when they sit down or when they come through our zone. We just watch them. We get depth, but we don't actually cover any damn body. A zone isn't just covering a patch of grass. It's actually covering an area. And if a guy comes into your area, you now match him. We don't do that well. The aggressive teams do. And so even though it's zone, it turns into a form of man because you're now in my area and I'm going to take this away. And then you'll see a linebacker who's dropping into coverage, but now he's matching this tight end underneath. You'll see him just come in, stick his hand in there, bop, ball pops into the air. 3 dudes around because everybody is aware. Everybody's tight in this zone coverage. They got this shit on a string. It's beautiful to watch. Balls in the air. Oh, they're coming down with that shit now. It's a pick. We don't do that. We get a ball in the air, there's nobody around to pick it off. It falls to the ground harmlessly. So it's a mindset, it's coaching, it's execution, it's all of those things. We have to be better, and so that's why. And to be honest with you, if you're not good at coaching it, just go get guys that are good at taking it away themselves. Clearly, we're not good at coaching taking the ball away. We're not. That's been proven over the last 3 years. We don't get a lot of turnovers. So go get guys that are good at getting turnovers. Then you don't have to worry about it. That's what they've done. That's why the emphasis was, let's go get guys that take the ball away, because we don't teach it well here. We just, the emphasis was, hey, we need more turnovers. How about you coach it? No, let's just go get guys that force them themselves, that have that mentality to take it away. You can't go draft Benjamin St-Juste, who didn't have a career interception in college, and expect him to come to the pros and have interceptions. That's not who he is. I remember having this discussion with Derek B. 3 years ago when we drafted him, I said, Derek B, I don't like this dude because he don't take it away. And Derek B was fixated on the PBUs. He's like, yo, a pass breakup on 3rd and 7 is just as good as a pick. You're getting a stop. They're punting us the ball, but it's not the same. If you're picking it off, you're getting great field position. This guy may punt the ball 62 yards, and it may be returned for a 5-yard gain. It's a 57-yard difference in field position. It's not the same. It's not the same. Man still doesn't have a career pick. They're not teaching that. They're not looking to put guys in a position to pick balls up. Guys like Asante Samuel, there's a reason that certain players pick balls off, because they're just aggressive. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's the death of them. But aggressive corners pick the ball off because they're looking to make a play. Some guys just are looking to be in the play. There's a difference. We got enough of the dudes looking to be in the play. Now they need guys who are looking to make the play. That's why they drafted Quan Martin. That's why they drafted Emmanuel Forbes. So all of that to me is a part of the process. But to your point, all of those things are why we don't get turnovers. Like, you get to the quarterback, strip the ball out, right? Like, certain guys get to the quarterback, and I can tell you right now, TJ Watt gets to the quarterback. TJ Watt is looking to get that rock out. He ain't just looking to get the quarterback on the ground. Even if he doesn't touch the quarterback, he's looking to slap the ball as he's being pushed around the quarterback. Our guys aren't doing that. I've seen guys, and very enviously, I may add, I've watched players from other teams rush the quarterback as they're getting pushed around the pocket from the tackle. They reach out, they see the quarterback in the pocket, they reach out, backhand, slap the quarterback's arm and ball simultaneously, ball's out. Quarterback falls on the ball, but that's a loss of 8. He didn't even touch the quarterback other than slapping his wrist a little bit, but more importantly, slapping the ball out. He knew he wasn't going to get to the quarterback. He couldn't grab him, but he was aware enough to know he's in reach. This tackle's going to push me around. I can't stop and turn this corner. But what I can do is slap that bitch. I've seen TJ Watt do that. Slap that bitch on the way around. Our guys ain't thinking like that, man. Like, that's a mindset. And you got to coach that. But sometimes it's got to be innate. And either you got it or you don't. And that's why they went and drafted dudes who have that, because we clearly aren't teaching it well enough. Fat American is back with facts and racks. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, LOL, when fans cried about Quentin Dunbar too. Absolutely. That's another good one, right? Oh my God, I can't believe they cut Dunny. And then what happened like a month or two later? He had the whole situation come up with the robbery and all of that shit with the Giants player DeAndre Baker. Look, a lot of people were going crazy, when that happened. Oh my God, I can't believe they cut Morgan Moses. Like, that's the shit we do. We go crazy over that, right? For what? Like, what have these guys ever really done? So again, I'm at the point now where we don't have to hold on to mediocre players and treat them like they're all pros. We don't have to do that anymore. Our roster is good enough to where we don't have to, look at a guy, put him on his pedestal and make him out to be something that he's not. Benjamin Slate, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Benjamin, who writes, I like roster taking forever to build. Don't want to start over again. I don't see them. Again, this is what happens when you bring in a new regime, though. I don't see them necessarily starting over. However, anything is possible. You bring in a new GM, you bring in a new coach, and you could see high turnover on this roster again. Now, I wouldn't be resistant to change if they, ended up doing that. They brought in a new GM, that GM picked a coach, and then that coach picked the staff, and then they, looked over the roster and saw the guys. Like, they're not going to get rid of Montez Sweat if he's still here. They're not going to get rid of Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Like, these guys can play. It's the ancillary guys. It's the cogs of the machine, the Jeremy Reeves of the world. He might not be here. He might not last with a new regime coming in, because that's a Ron Rivera favorite. Jeremy Reeves is. David Mayo wouldn't be here. You're not going to be upset that David Mayo's no longer here, right? You might be a little bit upset if All Pro Revo isn't here, but that's the cost of doing business. New regime comes in here. They got their own set of guys. They got, De'Ami Brown. We didn't draft him. He hasn't done shit. He's got to go, right? Some of you wouldn't be upset about that, but still, you know what I'm saying? That's not a guy we invested in. We can move on, all right? Some of y'all might, oh, yeah, man, they got to re-sign Cam Curl. The next group comes in here. We don't need to re-sign him. He can go. And you're pissed now. Like, that's the type of shit you got to worry about with a new regime coming in here, is that they're not tied to any of these players. Only the guys that they have already seen produce at a high level, those are the guys that are going to be here. Everybody else, fair game. Because I didn't draft you, and I have no ties to you whatsoever. We saw when the Titans got their new GM, Rand Carthen, how he came in, and Titans fans were upset because he let all their offensive linemen leave. And then he took a long time to re-sign Jeffrey Simmons. And there was this conversation in Tennessee about, hey, are we going to let all our good players leave? Because remember, their safety, Kevin Byard, he asked him to take a pay cut, and Kevin Byard was like, you must be outside your damn mind. Do you know who I am? And Rand Carthen had to back up like, bro, I was just asking. I was just seeing where we were at. No beef. I'm not getting rid of you. I just wanted to see if we could, make something happen. And Kevin was like, oh, okay, I'm just making sure you know where I'm standing, because I put in work here. And every Titans fan was looking like, is he about to get rid of Kevin Byard and Jeffrey Simmons? That's the shit you got to worry about when a new regime comes in. Are you going to keep the stuff that we feel like is worth keeping? Because if you don't have ties to that stuff and it's not already under contract, anything can happen. Anything can happen. Look at the Raiders. I would hate, my buddy's a Raiders fan. He's in hell right now. I would hate to be a Raider, because Ziegler came in there and he looked at that roster and he said, if you don't have ties to the New England Patriots at some point in your career, you can get got. They got rid of Derek Carr. They got rid of the tight end, Darren Waller. I think they're going to end up getting rid of the slot receiver, who was really good, but he had a down year last year because he had, injury issues. But I think they're going to get rid of him as well, not too into the distant future. They've turned that roster over, and it's not for the better, by the way. It's not for the better. So that's the only thing that I worry about, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Fat American is back with facts and racks. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, about the roster, simply put, I remember, I think it was 2020, maybe 2021. We played the Ravens in the preseason. Their second team smoked our starters. Back end of the roster was terrible. Now competitive. I remember that preseason game. I think I remember it a little bit differently than you do. We didn't play our starters that game. It was the last preseason. Remember, that was the game that their second round running back out of Ohio State. Why can't I think of his name? He got hurt in that game. And I remember it because there was so much conversation. I was a part of that conversation, by the way. So much being made about teams not playing. That was the first year we had 3 preseason games, I think. So much was made. J.K. Dobbins, that's the name of the running back. He got hurt in that final preseason game. He had no business playing in that game. Ron played no starters at all. And after the game, he was asked about his decision to not play starters because we didn't look good in the preseason the first 2 games. And he was asked about his decision to not play his starters. And he said, you saw what happened to their running back, right? And that was that. That was the end of that conversation. Nothing else needed to be said. So they killed us. I forgot the name of their quarterback, the one from Utah that always plays when Lamar goes down. He torched us, but we didn't play anybody. Now we did play some of the secondary guys that we were hoping to step up, and they got cooked, and a lot of guys got cut. Remember, I forgot which one of those corners actually played well, and he ended up making the team because he played well in that game. But that's nor here nor there. So I think you remember it a little bit differently. But your point is still valid. Their backups compared to our backups, that's what the takeaway was. It wasn't their backups versus our starters. It was their backups versus our backups, and it wasn't even close. It wasn't a competition, okay? It was the 2021 preseason that you're referring to. It wasn't even close. Their backups destroyed our backups. Made it look like our guys didn't even belong in the league, which a lot of them probably did not. So we're not at that point now. I feel confident that we can put our backups on the field and compete with, most teams in the league, right? That's what you want, is for your backup guys to come in and there to not be this drastic drop-off. I think we've put ourselves in a position where that is now, in fact, the case. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou, 2 questions. What do you think Cam Curl can do to raise his game to the next level? Also, how do you incorporate the tight ends, especially Amani Rodgers and Cole Turner, to maximize the offense? So the Cam Curl question first. I think what Cam can do to take his game to the next level is to create turnovers. That's the thing that he hasn't done since his rookie season. If you want to get paid in this league, creating turnovers is the easiest number that you can point at to say, hey, I deserve to be paid. Dudes aren't getting broken off in this league for being really good defenders and being where you're supposed to be all the time. You want to get paid. Justin Simmons had to fight to get his money in Denver, but he had a case. I take the football away at one of the highest clips in the league at the safety position. Kevin Byard looked at the Titans and said, who else is taking it away at the rate that I'm taking it away? He got paid. Look, the last 2 years, you could argue for Jesse Bates III have been down years. You know what Jesse Bates III can turn and say, though? I'm taking that bitch away. And the Falcons said, we agree. We're going to pay you. Minkah Fitzpatrick was made the highest paid safety in the league last year. You know why? Not because he's a good teammate. Not because he's in the right spot to make a tackle. Because he's taking the damn football away. You want to make money in this league? You want to put everybody on notice? Take the damn football away. Put yourself in a position to take the rock away. And look, you don't have to be the one to take it away. Put yourself in a position to be the guy that gets the hockey assist that leads to somebody else getting the takeaway. Remember, I just talked about, playing tighter zones, having that defender jump in there, deflect the ball into the air, and somebody else catches the tip drill. Hey, you get just as much credit for being a dude on the tip drill, starting it, as the guy that picks it off. Everybody's going to call the name of the guy that picked it off, but trust me, real fans know it was this dude that caused the pick. So we're going to give him just as much credit as the guy, because the guy who caught the tip drill, he really was just at the right place at the right time. He didn't jump her out. He didn't have tremendous coverage. He benefited from somebody else doing an extraordinary job. So we're going to give the guy that started all of this credit. That's just as good as picking the shit off yourself. Cam Curl ain't even doing that. Now, I love Cam Curl. I love what he brings to the table. I love his smarts. I love his dramatically. We saw the difference that he makes on this team defensively when he's in the lineup versus when he's not, which is why I think they did so many things to the secondary, because they're like, that shit can't happen again. One guy cannot bring our secondary to a screeching halt like it happened last year. That said, he's a part of the non-turnover issue on the defensive side of football. So if Cam Curl wants to take, and it's not just picking it off, how about forcing a fumble? How about punching the ball out? Cam Curl is around the football a ton. How about forcing a fumble or two? It ain't just about picking balls off. It's also about having an opportunity to poke it free. Make plays. That's what safeties do. That's what playmakers do. Make plays. How do you incorporate the tight ends? I feel like really a good offense has tight ends built into it, specifically on third downs and in the red zone. If you look at Travis Kelce, he can do it to you on any down, first, second, third, fourth, doesn't matter. But specifically on third downs, Travis Kelce is looking for Patrick Mahomes is looking for Travis Kelce. Right. In the red zone, big target, that's when you should be looking for your tight ends, right? Big body. I remember being so excited about Logan Thomas in 2020 after not being excited about him at all. If you guys can remember, I was like, you guys were selling me, on Logan Thomas, man, I think this guy could actually be really good. And I wasn't trying to hear that shit. I really wanted them to upgrade tight end, and I didn't think Logan Thomas was it. And then what we ultimately got was a guy that, no, he wasn't athletically gifted, not a great separator, but his sheer size, length for the position, the ability to be able to catch the football outside of his frame. You saw that, there were a couple of games where he went top shelf and got the football. That I think about that week 17 division clincher in 2020, where Alex Smith, right before halftime, throws a ball up where only Logan Thomas can go get it. And Logan stretches up there, and he's like Stretch Armstrong, and he snags that puppy back of the end zone, gets his 2 feet down, and it's a touchdown. And that's where a tight end at 6'6", 6'7" can really benefit you. And we just didn't see that last year for whatever reason. There's a game in 2021 against Buffalo. Well, we're getting our asses handed to us. It doesn't matter. But Logan catches a touchdown, left corner of the end zone, boxes out a defender, just sheer physicality, just stands in front of a dude that's probably like 6 feet, maybe 5'11", just post up in front of him, jumps up in the air, shields that defender with his body, and comes down with the football. That defender's never stood a chance. If you didn't see like gloves trying to come around, you wouldn't have even known he was there. He totally engulfed that guy with his body, boxed him out, and caught the touchdown in the corner of the end zone. That's the kind of shit that we should be seeing from our tight ends. We have big dudes. Amani Rodgers is 6'5". Logan Thomas is 6'6", 6'7". We have big dudes, man. The Curtis Hodges kid is 6'8". There's no excuse why we shouldn't be able to utilize these dudes in the red zone. Bare minimum. I think you're going to see implementation of the tight ends this year. I'm not worried about that. I really truly believe you're gonna feel totally different about our tight end position after this season. And I don't know if it'll have a lot to do with Logan Thomas or not. We'll see. But you'll feel a lot different about this tight end position when this year's done. I think because of where Eric Bieniemy is coming from and what he's seen and how he was a part of a team where the tight end made all the difference in the world, I think you're going to see a little bit more usage out of the tight end position this year. Ryan A., thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Haskins' half at Carolina was the worst half of quarterback play. Haskins' half at Carolina. Well, we were only at Carolina once with Haskins, and we won that game, and we ran the shit out of the football. I don't remember him being, he wasn't good, but I can't imagine him being any worse than Heineke was in the first half of that Green Bay game, or Dirty Ches was in the first half of the Giants game in 2017. I can't imagine him being any worse than either two of those guys. He was. I could imagine Haskins not being good because Dwayne wasn't very good in most of the games he played in. But we ran the ball very successfully, and we ended up winning that game. That's the game that got Ron fired. So maybe he was terrible, really, really bad. How bad is in question. How many turnover-worthy plays were there? Because in the Green Bay game with Heineke, there are at least 6. Remember, they forced a fumble, scooped it up, and scored, and the officials cut us a break by calling, which it was a penalty, but they could have not called that. It's the same way I felt about the Minnesota penalty on Benjamin St. Juste. It was a penalty, but they could have not called that. They were not calling that all game. They could have not called it, but they did. And they called it against the Packers, and it saved us because that was a fumble, scoop, and score. He had already thrown a pick 6, if you recall. Like, Haskins didn't throw a pick 6 in that game. I can't be assured of that. I don't remember that game. I try to forget everything about 2019. It was one of the worst seasons I've ever watched as a fan. So I've tried to erase that from the memory bank as much as I can, but I don't recall him throwing a pick 6. I think Dirty Chess threw one in the Giants debacle in the first half in 2017. And I know for a fact Heineke threw a pick 6 and almost had a scoop, and score 6 on him as well, if not for a penalty calling back. And had 3 or 4 more passes that should have been picked off. And if one of them did get picked off, it would have went to the crib too. So I don't know about that, but I'll take your word for it. Rob you, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Rob U, writes, what up, Lou? What up, Rob U? My guy, Rob U, says, what do you do if both Young and Sweat are going off by the trade deadline? Nothing. That's what you want. You want both of them going off. It'd be one thing if they're going off and we suck. Then you got to do something. But if they're helping us win, you're not busting that up during the season. Because as I've stated already, the NFC is as wide open as it's ever been. When we are considering and calling Jalen Hurts the best quarterback in the conference, not to shit on Jalen Hurts, because he was fantastic in the Super Bowl last year. And he had a damn good year last year where he finished second in the MVP voting. So I don't want to make it seem like Jalen Hurts isn't worthy of being the best quarterback in the conference, but he's got to do it again before I can start showering him with praise. But the fact that that's where we are in the NFC, where Jalen Hurts is the best that we may have to offer in the entire conference, tells you that this shit is wide open. So if we're playing ball and those boys are eating and eating good, they out there hunting like Elmer Fudd. Nah, you do nothing. That's what you do. You let the season play itself out, and then you make a TD or 2 after the season's done, and you keep it pushing. But you don't bust up what you got going on if you're winning ball games. We get to the trade deadline, and we're 6-2. Nah, I'm not trading either one of those boys. And they eating? Nah. We'll figure it out after the season. No worries. Sign one, franchise tag the other, sign and trade, or just let them walk, get a 3rd round compensatory, whatever. You'll figure that out when the time comes. But unless you're 2-6, and they're eating, then okay, let's try and get something for him. He's no good to us on the roster. Let's just get something for one of them. But if you ask me, if they're playing well, that probably means we're playing well. Obviously, offense has a lot to do with it, but if they're playing well defensively and they're getting after the quarterback, that really bodes well for us as a team. Starface, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Starface, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, writes, Sam will be top 10 in 3 years. We hit the jackpot. I hope that's the case. I can't co-sign that right now. I'm looking to take baby steps. I'm looking at a particular quarterback in the division this year, and I'm saying, I need your spot, bro. That's the goal for this year, is play competent football, prove everybody wrong year one as the starter, and leapfrog one quarterback in the division. That's what I've set out for Sam as his goal for the season. Solidify the quarterback position here in Washington, leapfrog a guy in the division. And then we can start talking turkey next year. We can start talking crazy about, hey, where we heading, and we got a guy now, and now you can start building around that guy. But I can't start talking about top 10 in 3 years. I just need him to solidify that he's the right man for the job first, which I'm confident that he's going to do. Starface, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Starface, right. Sam wants to make decisions fast. His film is fire. Sam wants to make decisions fast, but also Sam has a quick release and he throws the ball with zip and accuracy. I remember watching the Cowboys game back, and I've told you guys this already. I've watched that game at least 5 or 6 times this offseason. And there's a throw to Terry on one of the early third downs in the game, probably like the second or third possession of the game. And Terry, turns his head to go up the field and drops. And it's rare. Terry does not do this very often. It shocked me. Even watching it now, it's still shocking because it's just not Terry. That's not in his DNA to drop passes. And he just flat out dropped it. I mean, it's as egregious a drop as I've ever seen from Terry McLaurin. And I think Terry was just shocked at he didn't have to concentrate on the ball. Like with Heineke and Wentz and, Haskins and, Fitzpatrick and Alex Smith and what was the other guy's name that played the wing game against the Eagles? I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. He always had to make sure that he looked the ball in because it took it forever to get there, and it usually wasn't super accurate either. So you could never take your eye off the ball and start looking up the field. You only can do that when you know where the ball is going to be, and you can already assume, hey, it's going to be right here in my hands. And I think that caught Terry off guard, like, oh shit, this ball is so accurate. I actually can turn and run with this puppy out in front of me, leading me up the field. I can actually do something. And he forgot the most important thing: catch the ball. That's the thing that I'm excited about. Like, we could talk about a lot of things, but that game featured more catch and run than any game we've seen in Washington since Kirk Cousins was here. And you probably got to go back to either 15 or 16 to see that much catch and run in a single game. The 2 Jahan slants, the Terry catch and run for the touchdown on his first throw of the game, that throw to Terry that should have been caught on the third down, the Jahan comeback. When's the last time you've seen somebody run a comeback, come back down the stem, the ball is outside and up the field, so you catch it and it takes you away from the defender up the sideline? When's the last time you've seen that in Washington? I'm out here getting excited about shit that should be routine. But because we've been deprived of it for so long, that shit looks like $1 million to me. And you want to know why I'm excited? The ineptitude at the quarterback position we've been dealing with. You want to know why I'm excited about Sam Howell after one game? It's because of plays like that. So, yeah, the decision-making is quick. Sometimes it's too quick, like the interception he threw in the end zone. He made up his mind before the snap. This is where I'm going with the football, no matter what. There was no way in hell that ball was, if that guy didn't pick it off, there were 2 other Dallas defenders who was like, hey, let me have it. It just so happened that the first dude picked it off. If he didn't catch it, 2 other Dallas defenders could have. There was no way that ball was getting to Terry. 0. He had already made up his mind. So sometimes making up your mind and being quick with your decisions can backfire. Sometimes you got to let the play itself out, make the right decision. But for the most part, it was bing, bang, boom. Ball out. In timing and rhythm of the play, that's what you want. Accurate throws. That's what we saw in that game. That's why I'm excited. And, of course, the added benefit of his legs. I need him to understand that you're not at UNC. We don't need you to be Captain America. Get what you can get and get down. And he did that in that game, but he also took some sacks and some hits that I don't need him taking. There's one sack that he ran to the right sideline, and there was nowhere to go with the football. Throw that bitch away. That's hot potato at that point. 3 Dallas defenders bearing down. Throw that bitch away. You don't need to hold on to it. He held on to it, got slammed down on the ground. Like, Sam, bro, no, we don't do that up here. No. You're too important. Don't take a 6-yard loss either. That's what you did on that play. Ran out of the pocket and got your brains bashed in on the turf and slammed down on your shoulder for a 6-yard loss. Don't do that. Throw that away. Live to fight another day. So there's some things he's got to learn, but that all comes with experience. First thing I'm doing, if I'm turning on the film, I don't want to talk about these accurate throws to Jahan and to Terry. I don't want to talk about that great run on the read option that you keep and you cut it back and score. I want to talk about you not taking this hit right here. This is unnecessary. You weren't playing the league for a long time. You want to play 17 games and not 14? Avoid that shit right there. So, again, all this is part of the growing pains, but I love Sam. And his decision-making helps as well. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Duncan writes, you do know this is the same group that kept Doc Rivers in Philadelphia. Do you really think the Commodes will be any better this year? Really meh. Comparing the two, that's the thing that I think has been the most frustrating during this process is listening to all, it's human nature. This is what people do. But all the beat writers, I ain't gonna call no names. There's one in particular that has been going over the top with it. But every time they show them on TV, they want to talk about them. And every time they talk about the 76ers, they want to take, something he's done with the Sixers and apply it to the Commanders. It's two different sports. But that's probably one of the most frustrating parts about this whole process is everybody wants to compare the 76ers to Washington and say, well, this is what he's going to do. He did it with the 76ers. It's not apples to apples, That may be part of his ownership style. But you can't just compare the two and say, well, he did this with the 76ers. He's going to do this with the Commanders. At the end of the day, we'll see what he does, We'll see what he does. I just know this. The 76ers were one game away from the Eastern Conference Finals. When he got to Philadelphia and took over the team, it was all about the process, and they sucked ass. And he helped them turn it around and become one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. So give him some time. We'll see. William Rogers Jr., thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, do you feel like the coaching staff is going to take away the playmaking ability of Forbes and Martin? Nah, I think they're – so I'll say this. Our scheme encourages guys to make plays. You're less likely as a corner to pick off passes in man coverage because you're worried about your luggage. Your back is to the quarterback. You don't see what's going on. You don't even know the ball's coming. You're in coverage. You're worried about your guy, so you don't know the ball's coming. We play a lot of zone. Zone allows you to, eyeball your man, but also keep your eye on the quarterback. See what's going on. See what route combinations are being run in front of you and make a play on the ball. Our scheme is player friendly. It protects players, doesn't put a lot of guys in bad positions to be embarrassed. If everybody does their job adequately, you shouldn't be giving up too many big plays. Our scheme is very player friendly. So I don't think they're going to take away the ball, skills or playmaking ability of Forbes or Martin. They're going to be put in positions to succeed. And it's up to them to go above and beyond the Call of Duty, which is what we like. That's why you see a guy like Derek Forrest come on in his second year and have 4 interceptions. You know why he's allowed to do that? Because of the scheme that we play. He's allowed to see the football in flight and go and get it. This defense allows a lot of that. You just got to have guys that have the ability to stick their foot in the ground, recognize and identify route concepts. And hey, when he lines up like this, when he has this type of split, this is the route that they like to run to him. Be able to identify that on film, get a tell, use it to your advantage, and make a play. That's what the elite guys do. One of the things I've heard about Forbes is that he's a tireless worker in terms of film study. Like he's like that you don't pick off that wide receiver screen against Kentucky if you're not watching film. You know how hard it is to jump a wide receiver screen? Do you understand that you don't see that because it's hard to jump a wide receiver screen? There's so many moving parts to that play. He got a running start, jumps in front of the receiver, and before anybody can even figure out what's going on, he's in full sprint with the football towards the end zone. There had to be a tell. And I heard him talk about the play, and he knew exactly what they were going to do. He'd seen it on film. He saw the splits, and he was like, this is what they're about to do. That's different. And it takes a different dude up here that's locked in to be able to do that. So, no, I don't think they're going to take away their ability to make plays on the football. It's up to them to be able to take the scheme for what it is. And inside of the scheme, there are pockets and opportunities for you to make plays. Go make a play. This is a very player-friendly scheme that we run in Washington. It's not overly complex. There isn't a lot of thought involved. Like it doesn't bog you down mentally like, oh man, we running all these different blitzes and different schemes and, zone dogs. And no. We're not doing a lot of that shit. It's pretty simple. We keep it simple here. So it's going to allow guys to have an opportunity to make plays. Can you make them is the question. Jamal Hamlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jamal writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Jamal? I'm feeling way better about our offense. We got a quarterback with a quick release, fast twitch playmakers, great 1-2-3 punch at the running back position, athletic tight ends, and most of all, an OC to bring it together. NHO. It all sounds good. It all sounds good. I feel the same way that you do. We still don't know what Eric Bieniemy is as a play caller. We've all psyched ourselves up into thinking that this guy is the next coming of fill in the blank as a great play caller, but we have no idea what he is as a play caller. Everything you've said, though, I like, because I was talking to Derek B earlier today, and he was getting on me, and that's what I told you. I love Derek B because he's always playing devil's advocate. And I had said something on the podcast the other day to the effect of, we have an elite skill group of offensive weapons. And he's like, elite? Are you crazy? Elite means top 5. For me, elite is top 8. So my definition of elite and his are different. And that's fine. That's why we have these conversations. But to me, elite is top quarter of the league. 32 teams, top 8 puts you in the upper quartile, the upper quartile of the league. You're in that top quarter of the league. I think we have a top 8 skill group. Now, the one thing that may be slowing us down in that conversation is tight end. However, I feel like I told him this because he said we don't have the best player at any position in our division on offense. And that's debatable, and he may be right. But I said it's not about one player. I said my example to him was the Vikings have Justin Jefferson. They got Jay Jettis. and nothing else. That's why they drafted, Jordan Addison. They got nothing on offense. They're looking to trade Dalvin Cook. That offense isn't elite. The skill position players aren't elite on offense. Last time I checked, they had nothing really at tight end. If Dalvin Cook isn't there, they don't have an explosive or dynamic running back. You just got one receiver. I mean, I actually like KJ Osborne, but he's not a number 2. He's a number 3. So you got nothing outside of Jay Jettas. So but you got the best receiver in football. So one guy doesn't make up the group. I'll take my 3 guys over, having the best receiver in football. I'll take our group over that. Because Terry's comparable, right? He's not Justin Jefferson. He's not Jamar Chase, but he's comparable. He's good enough. You're not falling off a cliff with Terry McLaurin compared to those guys. You're not. Trust me. I'll take my guy and then throw in a Jahan Dotson and a Curtis Samuel. I feel damn good about that. And I told him, I'll take my 3 at the top of our group of receivers over any 3 in the division. Furthermore, I'll take our 3 over any team in the conference. Show me a 3 that's better. So we were going back and forth, and at the end we shared a laugh like we always do, and at the end of the day, I believe in this skill group that we've assembled, including the tight ends. And that's the one group outside. And again, offensive line isn't a skill group, so we're not talking about them. Outside of tight end, skill wise, running backs, receivers, I think we've got a dynamite group with a ton of potential. And if the tight ends become what I think they could be as a group, it will solidify our spot in the top 8 as an elite group. So for some, we may be on the outside looking in. That's fine. If you add the tight ends in and they prove to be really good, then we're in lifeline. Because when I look at a lot of the teams with really good receivers, they don't have 3 of them. The 49ers don't have another guy after Deebo Samuel. They got George Kittle, though. Counts as a hell of a lot. They got Christian McCaffrey. Shit, right? They got one at each level, which we can't say. But, and all 3 of those guys are elite. So it's a little different than like a Vikings, for instance. But when you look at all 3 of our receivers, when you look at both of our backs, and we'll see what C-Rod adds to the mix, but I'm just talking about the 2 that we know in the NFL, what they are capable of doing. And then you look at the tight end group and you say a lot left to be desired there, but we'll see what happens. I like what we can produce. And this is what Ron has been talking about. He looked at the Chiefs and he said, we can do that. And he turned to Eric Bieniemy and he said, hey, Eric, you were in Kansas City. You've been around that talent. We got that same shit, right? We can do that. And Eric's like, you damn right we can do that shit. So I like where we sit. Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mr. Ron B writes, what up, Lou? What's up, OG, triple OG? Mr. Ron B, who writes, I'm on the EC celebrating my daughter's college graduation, but wanted to do a quick check-in, even cried a little. So proud, man. It's those types of moments that makes this thing called life worth it, Congratulations to you and your daughter and your entire family, because it takes a village, right? It takes a village. It's not one person that raises a child. It takes a village. And a lot of people have had their hand in your daughter graduating. So special milestone. A lot of hard work went into that. And so congratulations to her, you and your family. And hey, enjoy that moment, man. Bask in that. So Mob, y'all know what to do. Show Mr. Ron B some love. Yeah, man. Good stuff, Mr. Ron B. Really appreciate you, and enjoy the festivities, man. Enjoy it. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I know that was a mouthful. I don't do it on purpose. It's just my writing style, and I wanted to dissect those whole position groups. Should have shortened it. Were there any of my takes you disagreed with? Nah, not any of them. Like, you're a sharp guy, and we don't always agree. But even when we don't agree, your takes are thought-provoking. They force me to go back and assess, maybe I might have missed something. Sometimes we just don't see eye to eye, and that's fine. Those things happen, but for the most part, we're usually here. We're usually locked in. We see it relatively the same. And I didn't disagree with anything. Even Tyler Larson, I don't agree he's going to be cut. But even your rationale was sound. And I thought about it because I looked at the ages of some of the players, and one of the themes of Ron's tenure has been keeping younger players over older players. Obviously, they're not cutting Ricky Stromberg. Obviously, they're not cutting Nick Gates. That's two centers right there. Do they keep a third center on the roster? Larson is a center. Larson is not a guard/center. He's just a center. Whereas Gates and Stromberg can both offer you position flex. I don't know if you get that with Tyler Larson. I've never seen Larson play anything but center. So he could be the odd man out. If they decide, I personally think they're going to keep 10 offensive linemen this year. I think they're scared to death of what happened to them at center the last 2 years, and I don't think they want to run the risk of cutting Larson loose. So what's going to ultimately be the key is how many of these guards actually pan out. How many of these guys, like Chris Paul is in the mix. He could start or he could not make the roster. You see what I'm saying? Like, because if you cut Chris Paul, nobody's coming to get Chris Paul from you. And that's the stuff you got to think about. If you cut Tyler Larson, there's always a team that could use a backup center. Always. So if Larson's available, somebody could say, hey, watch some tape on him the last 2 years when he's healthy, really effective. He could be of some use to us. And he's gone, just like that. He gone. But you cut Chris Paul, ain't nobody checking for your 7th round pick from last year's draft. He's all yours. So I think, I didn't disagree with any of your takes. Everything was logically sound and rooted in things that made sense. It's just Tyler Larson, I think, is going to be here, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's not. And you don't have to shorten your post, man. Like, I don't ever want to put a muzzle on your greatness, okay? That was A1, posting at its finest. Now, again, it was a lot, but I don't mind that. If you've got thoughts and you want to get them out, and that's the way you get them out, by all means, please. I told you guys, I read just about everything, even when it's a novel, as that one was. Still loved it. And just because you took that much time, you know how much time you took out of your day to type all of that? I'm going to read it. That's why I felt compelled to read it tonight. Not all of it, but most. I read most of it. The only one that I really didn't read all of it was Cam Dantzler. It was too much. But you put in all that time, trust me, I'm going to reciprocate that energy. So I appreciate you, man. Red Wing 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, who writes. But if you thought that was long, you should see my old stuff from like 7 years ago. Stuff looks like I'm publishing an academic journal. LOL. You're talking to a fellow writer. I was a hell of a writer in high school and into college. I hated writing, first of all, but I was good at it. Damn good at it. And so I know how it gets. You start going and then it just flows. And next thing you know, you look up and you're like, damn. Like I do that now. I have issues like with Twitter. I struggle. I'm so glad they went to 140 characters. That's why I didn't tweet a lot before, because I can never condense my thoughts into 70 characters. It just was impossible for me. Or 40 or whatever the hell it was. I could never do it. And I refuse to shorten words that don't need to be shortened. I refuse to speak improper English, because that's just not how, my mind works. I'm not shortening words that I don't like. When I talk in slang, is because that's how I'm saying the shit. I want you to receive the message as if I was talking to you. So I don't need to put that G on the end of an ing word. I'm leaving it without the G because you need to know I'm saying it in my twang. Not because I don't know how to spell the word, Every now and again, if I'm using the word because and I need space, I'll put B/C. Yeah, I'll do that from time to time. I'd much rather spell out the word because, but it's tough because I like to say shit and I like to get it all out. I've never seen it that long, though, in a comment section. So that was the first for me. Oh, man. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Joe Rockhead, writes, that's why I don't understand how detractors saying he only played one game. Like, why would he get worse with more reps? I mean, there's a way that happens. We've seen guys. Robert Griffin III is a great example, right? A phenomenal rookie season. Then he decided he didn't want to do this. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to be a drop back guy. There was film out on him as to what he wants to do. And he got worse with more reps. He got worse. He didn't get better. He got worse. So, yeah, that can happen. It's not impossible to get worse as you play more, but that's reserved for bad football players. Good players don't get worse with more reps. Good players get better with more reps. As time progresses, as they see more coverages, more defensive schemes, they get more comfortable. They know what teams are trying to do to them, and they know how to attack it. The more you see, the better you are. That's generally how it works when you're a good football player. The more you play, the better you get, because you've seen it now. The less that they've seen of you, the better it is for you. That's why I think Eric Bieniemy has a chance to destroy the league this year. There's no Eric Bieniemy film. They can't go to Kansas City and say, well, he's going to do this. They don't know what the hell Eric Bieniemy is going to do. They've never seen him as a play caller before. So we should be able to have an advantage the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season until there's tape out there. And then Bieniemy has shown the ability to adjust to the adjustments. To me, that's where the elite coaches separate themselves. Because I'm going to come out the gate swinging, right? And I catch you slipping. I might drop you, and knock you down to the mat. And you say, okay, I see what the hell you out here doing. So now you adjust. I'm going to feint. I'm not just going to come in there with my guard down. I'm going to feint, maybe get you off, your balance a little bit. All right. Move my head, get a little head movement, start establishing the jab, and just when because you might want to be a counter puncher or whatever, you started off aggressive. I know what you want to do now. I see what you're trying to set me up for. Now I'm going to try to take advantage. Now you got to have an advantage, or you have to have the ability to see the adjustment that's being made and make an adjustment to the adjustment. Like football's cat and mouse. It's always a game of, all right, this is what I'm giving you. Now you say, I'm taking that away. You thought I was giving you this. Now I'm giving you this. So you show them something early in the game, right? Now they want to take that away. Now there's a counter off of that, right? The good teams do that. I throw a wide receiver screen in the first quarter, right? And it goes for 18 yards. And you're like, that shit can't happen again. So now what I'm going to do, fake the wide receiver screen, send a receiver he's supposed to look like he's stalk blocking going up the field. Boom, takes up down the sideline on a wheel route. And boom, you're hoping that safety bites down. You're hoping that corner is eyeballs in the backfield, not where he's supposed to be. And now you got a freebie down the sideline for a touchdown. That's how you adjust to the adjustment that's being made, right? You throw a tight end screen early in the game. They're looking for it. So you throw a tight end delay and you have your tight end come out like he's throwing a screen, and then you have your tight end on the back side of that, on the other side of that play, sneak out, right? On the other side. Everybody, all eyes are on the tight end screen you threw earlier in the game. You get the backside tight end who on the backside is look like he's just doing his job, and then he leaks into the flat on the opposite side of the field. You throw it back to him. Just little shit like that. I saw the Lions do it as well as you can do it last year against the Jets on a 4th down, no less. They had run this play earlier in the game, right? Everybody's looking for run first and foremost. But they had run a play earlier in the game on a critical 3rd down. Little play action fake. And they ended up throwing it out into the flats to the running back. So they had already converted a couple of 3rd downs in short with run plays, and then they had a 3rd down where they faked it and they threw it out into the flats to the fullback, right? So late in the game, 4th down, the game's on the line. They're down 6. All right, 4th and I want to say it was 1 or 2. And they do this beautiful fake with Jared Goff. And they go play action fake, and Goff holds it. And he looks into the flat, and everybody reacts to the flat. And then the tight end, he delays late, comes across the middle of the field, and there's nobody with the tight end. He throws it to the tight end. This tight end, he looks like he's running a 5 flat. I mean, it seems like this dude is running in slow motion, but the fake was so good. And the counter to the adjustment to the adjustment was so good that this dude was able to run for like 47 yards. I'll never forget, because I had the Jets. Everybody picked the Lions, and I was this close to winning that game, and that would have gotten me a tie for first place. I lost that game. I fell back 2 games behind, and I never caught up. And I was pissed off at the Jets. But that was a well-designed play, and that's why everybody wanted the Lions offensive coordinator this year. And he said, nah, I appreciate all the attention, but I'm going to stay in Detroit. I feel like they're building something. And he was a huge part of their success. You guys saw the week 18 game against Green Bay. Game on the line, and they do they did the hook and ladder. Who's doing that without the game being on the line? Throw the ball to one dude, he flicks it to the other guy, and he's up the sideline for a touchdown. Like, I think he ended up getting a big gain out of it. Like, who's doing that? The creativity that Johnson showed as a play caller was ridiculous. That's what I'm hoping Bieniemy brings to the table, man. We're not sure that's going to happen, but I said all of that to say this. Good players don't get worse with more reps. They get better. They're going to be growing pains. They're going to be mistakes, but that's all a part of the growing process, right? Mediocre to bad players get worse as time progresses, or they stay the same. So we'll see what Sam Howell is. Starface, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Starface writes, new QB, new owner, a new hope, we can be fans again. That is part of what I talked about at the beginning of tonight's show, which is there's this optimism that exists that feels different because of the new ownership, because there was always like a cap on what we were going to do as a team because of ownership. It was always felt like this cap that was put on the success that we could have. I think there's a reason that we've never won more than 10 games in a season since 1991, right? Like, I've done this already. The Lions have done it. The Jags have done it. The Texans, and the Texans used to be a really good organization, but they suck now. So you look at the Texans have done it. The Browns have done. Everybody's had at least a year where they won 11 or 12 games. They just had a fantastic year. We haven't. We haven't. I'd venture to say, and I can't say this with 100% certainty, and there were at least 4 teams that weren't even in the league that far back, but we know those teams have done it, so I can already rule them out. But since 1991, we haven't won 11 games or more in a season. There's no team in the league that can say that. I can't confirm that. I'd bet money, though, that's the case. Because everybody gets lucky. Everybody has that 1 year you catch lightning in the bottle and you win 12 games. You win 11 games. Everybody does that at least once. We've never done it once since the Super Bowl season of 91. Do you understand how inept we've been? We have never won big in a season since 1991. Let that shit sink in. And we have this same conversation, but it still boggles my mind saying it because it doesn't make any sense. In a league that is set up for parity, in a league that is set up for a team to come out of nowhere, to go from worst to first, we've never had an 11 or 12 or 13 win season in over 30 years. What? Everybody's done it at least once. Expansion teams have come in the league. The Panthers did it in their second year in existence. So did Jacksonville. We haven't done it once. Arizona's done it. They've been to a Super Bowl. Think about all the teams in the league that suck. I mean, everybody, you don't suck every year, but think about any team that you can think of and say, well, they have been ass, haven't won a playoff game in 20 years. I bet you they had a 13 or 12 win season in there somewhere, though. Yeah, Raiders been to a Super Bowl, won a bunch of games. Saints been to a Super Bowl, won a bunch of games. Falcons had the 2016 season with Matt Ryan, went to the Super Bowl. Jags went to the AFC Championship game with Blake Bortles of all people. Lions stink every year, it seems like. They had a 12-win season with Matthew Stafford. They had a couple of 11-win seasons. I mean, not a one in the playoffs, but they've won. They've had that year where they won, and it just happened that Green Bay was still better and won the division. We haven't had one. And not all of it is Dan Snyder, because I said since 91, Dan Snyder didn't get here to 99. So it hasn't all been Dan Snyder, but a huge chunk of that time frame, all but 8 of it was Dan Snyder. All but 7, let's call it 7. All but 7 of it was Dan Snyder. And I thought he stunted any growth that we were having in 99 when he first got here. He stunted any growth with what he did in 2000. So anyway, yeah, there's a different level of hope right now. It almost feels dirty, like something's off. Why am I this optimistic and feeling good and not feeling like there's a chance for me to have egg on my face? Why do I feel this good? Well, one of the reasons is because we actually have talent. Like, you're not rooting for a team hoping, wishing, but rather, no, I have talent to actually lean on. Like, I don't have to hope that the other team self-destructs and that's the way we win. No, we can actually win on our own merit. We're good enough. I don't need your 3 turnovers. I'll take them gladly. Graciously, I will accept them. But I don't need your 3 turnovers to win the game. I don't need 7 penalties for 112 yards to win the game. I don't need you to miss 2 field goals. I can beat you by myself. Thank you very much, though. I'll take those if you're handing them out. But this year, I don't think we'll need that. I want those things. Always do. Always will. But in past years, we needed that to happen. I don't think we're going to need that this year. Ethan Dykes, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, ED, writes, Sup, Lou? Sup, Ethan? I like the Forbes pick, but I'm kind of sad they didn't take O-line in the first round. We don't have a true blue chipper that we really need. We don't have to have elite offensive linemen in order to have a good offensive line. Think about the Tennessee Titans over the last 5 years. This little run that they've had, this little mini run they had with Ryan Tannehill, winning all these games and getting to the AFC Championship like 3-4 years ago. Name the blue chipper on their offensive line. And don't name Taylor Lewan because he's been good, not great. When he's been healthy. He's been good, not great. They haven't had one elite player. Roger Saffold, Nate Davis. Like, these are some of the names that they've had. Dennis Kelly. All those guys are elite. But you know what they did? They played well as a unit. Look at the Chiefs' offensive line. That first Super Bowl that they won, can you name one offensive lineman on that group? They were damn good. Up until COVID hit, they were damn good. And then, Laurent Duvernay Tardif decided to go, be a doctor, and more power to him. And guys started getting hurt. And then that's when you started to hear about their offensive line woes all of a sudden. That's when they had to go get Joe Thuney, and they had to go out and trade for Orlando, Brown. They have any blue chippers on that offensive line? You know what they told Orlando Brown? You want too much damn money. Go get your money somewhere else. And they went out and got the Jacksonville tackle and said, we'll figure out the offensive line. Don't worry about it. You don't consider Andrew Wiley a blue chipper. We just took him off of their offensive line. I love Creed Humphrey. I think he is a blue chipper. But and Joe Thuney is a blue chipper, but that they didn't have all those guys before is the point I'm trying to make. Yes, you want elite offensive linemen. They help a lot. But just get a group that is able to be cohesive and gel together and play well. An offensive line should operate like a fist, not like individuals. Not like this, but like this. That's what you want your offensive line to be. I'm more concerned with that than I am having a Trent Williams. It's nice to have a Trent Williams on your offensive line. That's great. Just give me 5 dudes that are really good at their job, that stay healthy and answer the bell week in, week out. Guys that I can trust. I'll rock with that. And I don't know if we have that, by the way. I'm hoping we have that. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, that was the last super chat. And I thank you guys for kicking it with the kid again on another long, stream. We had the technical difficulties earlier, but you guys hung with me. I appreciate that, because after I went dark for a second there, I could have easily came back to 50 of you, and y'all could have said, well, I'll catch him next time. But y'all hung in there with the kid, and we were able to fight through. I'm proud of myself for not ending the stream. I didn't panic. I thought that it was over, though. I was like, shit. I went over to my modem or my router, rather, and I was waiting for that red light to come on, because if I see red, game over. Flip, 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 game over. Red light came on. I said, well, that's all she wrote. And I was about to unplug it, and I just said, I'm going to leave it alone, because unplugging it ain't going to solve the problem. I've already been through this before. I'm cooked. So I left it plugged in. I sat down, and I just looked around, and then voila, it came back on. I was shocked. And I sat here for about a minute or two, kind of in disbelief, and it came back. So I appreciate y'all, not abandoning me in my time of need, but sticking it out with me and making this an excellent stream once again. So anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. There will be a Louie T Network podcast episode tomorrow. So for those of you who are interested, Look forward to chopping it up with you then. If you're not going to be there for that, I'll try to have something for you over the weekend, like I've had the last couple of weekends. A little food for thought, something to keep the juices flowing. If I can, if I can't, I'll see you on the other side of the weekend. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. God bless. Oh, first of all, post up and take command. You know what it is. Now, God bless and good night. And one more thing. If you haven't done so already and you're interested, I have the Music Head University, my music channel. Check that out. Uploads are every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon. So be on the lookout for that if you're interested. Again, if you're not interested in that, do not subscribe. And no hair off my back. Still love you. But if you are interested, go ahead, check out the channel, support, like the video, sub up, and buckle up because we're going to have a fun ride over on Music Head University as well. So with that said, y'all get out of here. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.
The Louie T Network is powered by Music Head University. Music Heads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
LouieTeeNetwork.